A young man excitedly spreads his arms wide, showing a vast open landscape filled with fields, workshops, and even houses, declaring that they can build as much as they want in this place. Behind him, a group of women and a child watch with a mix of awe and curiosity. The young man grips a large weapon, determined as he reflects on the impending destruction of the surface. He vows to protect those dear to him with everything he has, promising to create a safe haven where they can live in peace. Two women nearby listen intently, moved by his resolve. The scene shifts to a lively, bustling village centered around a massive tree, where people of various kinds, elves, humans, and others, go about their daily lives with smiles and laughter. The young man declares his intention to build this new village with his own hands, embodying hope and renewal. A tender family moment unfolds in a cozy home, where a boy enthusiastically praises a new game to a man named Mazumichi. The boy's mother watches quietly, smiling gently. Mazumichi recalls his parents, his father's unstoppable passion for game development and his mother's gentle support, and expresses his deep love for them both. In his second year of high school, the young man answers a phone call with a confused expression, then stands silently before two covered bodies on hospital beds. At a funeral, he and others mourn beneath framed photos of his late parents, while he reflects on how losing them plunged him into a deep, isolating despair for years. Surrounded by clutter and trash, he curls up in a dark room, admitting he nearly lost his will to live until a game called Dragonia Chronicle 2 filled the emptiness in his heart, becoming a cherished memento from his parents that changed everything for him. Determined to honor his parents' legacy, he immerses himself in programming, studying intensely and eventually securing a job at a game company. Despite his dedication, exhaustion overwhelms him as coworkers urgently call for help, and he collapses face first onto his desk, overwhelmed by the pressure. Exhausted from pulling all-nighters for days, he apologizes silently to his deceased parents. Feeling unable to continue, outside, rain pours down on a large old house, mirroring his heavy heart and the weight of his struggles. Two maids stand outside in the pouring rain beside a stone wall, troubled as they discuss what to do with a crying baby lying on the wet ground. One insists they can't just leave him there. Though the orphanage is overwhelmed, tears stream down one maid's face as she gently picks up the drenched infant wrapped in cloth. The baby, soaked and crying, looks up with wide, tear-filled eyes as the scene shifts to a panoramic view of a peaceful town under clear skies. A young man lies in bed, smiling softly as the narration reveals that 26 years have passed. Inside a cozy room, a girl with fox ears and a fluffy tail energetically shakes the young man awake, calling his name and demanding he get up. The town outside is calm and bright, contrasting the lively morning inside. The young man tumbles out of bed with a surprised expression, rubbing his head as he complains about the rough wake-up. He asks the girl, Annie, if she can ever wake him up normally for once, showing a mix of amusement and mild frustration. The young man recalls dying 26 years ago and being reborn in a new world filled with various races unlike the Japan he once knew. As he prepares to leave, a girl with fox ears anxiously reminds him to take his magic stone and watch out for bandits, while he insists he's not a kid anymore. He reflects on growing up alongside two companions, Annie and Ollie, in the same orphanage after reincarnation, supporting each other to survive. Together, they have become like family, sharing smiles and camaraderie. The scene shifts to a lively morning where the fox-eared girl and another cheerfully shake the young man awake. Warning he'll be late, he protests, but a large, cheerful beast-like man calls out that breakfast is ready, carrying plates piled high with food. At the breakfast table, the young man is overwhelmed by the abundance of dishes, while the beast-like man encourages him to eat heartily to avoid collapsing. The young man admits that overeating feels inevitable now, but the older figure laughs it off, insisting this is the way to stay strong. Meanwhile, the fox-eared girl sighs with concern, wondering if he'll truly be okay despite his hard work for their family. A large beast-like man and a fox-eared young woman discuss a certain individual's recent strange behavior at the tavern, expressing concern that his actions might lead to trouble despite believing he has his reasons. The scene shifts to the Grand Royal Alchemy Workshop building. Inside, a young man named Nino arrives, already uneasy about the situation, as the jovial supervisor greets him warmly, calling him the workshop's treasure. The supervisor immediately bombards Nino with a mountain of tasks, demanding everything be completed in a single day, leaving the young man overwhelmed and pleading for a moment. Nearby, a smirking blonde-haired man named Arnault watches with amusement as Nino struggles under the pressure. Arnault taunts Nino, suggesting that life as a lowly handyman is tedious and rough, filled with monotonous tasks, and implies that Nino should aspire to be more like him. He dramatically shatters a large crystal, challenging Nino's ambitions with a sly smile. While Nino listens intently, his expression serious and thoughtful. Arnault showcases a flashy magical transmutation, boasting about his impressive skills and prompting admiration from onlookers who praise him as the top performer of the term. Nino modestly denies being capable of such feats, quietly admitting he couldn't perform such magic even if he wanted to. A blonde-haired man mocks the young man, claiming common race types lack talent, while the young man silently thinks about how loud the other is so early in the morning. He then carefully breaks a large crystal with his gloved hands. Focused, he reflects that his current role is that of a transmutation artisan working in the workshop. Scrolls explain that a transmutation artisan uses 6 colored magic stones, crystals infused with magical power, to transform natural materials into various objects, making it an all-purpose manufacturing trade. The profession demands precise magical control, making it extremely difficult to enter, as shown by 2 nervous apprentices struggling with their tasks. The young man contemplates how humans, known as the common race, lack the magic amplification called Dragon's Blessing, preventing them from performing high-level transmutations like other races. This limits him to basic transmutations, making him essentially a handyman responsible for material analysis, raw material extraction, purification, and toxin removal. Despite this, he questions whether it truly matters. Resolute, he admits he doesn't mind being a handyman if it means protecting his simple life and is determined to do whatever it takes. As he works with magic stones, an older man with pointed ears and glasses approaches. Asking if he has a moment, the young man turns, recognizing him as Master Balbanas, and prepares to listen. The young man enters a spacious, well-lit room where a serious-looking older man with a single horn and glasses stands waiting. The older man invites him inside, and the young man bows politely, sensing the gravity of the summons. He worries silently that being called away from work must mean bad news, noticing the older man's unusually serious demeanor. The older man turns to face a large window, confirming the young man's 10 years of service, which coincides with his own tenure as workshop master. He expresses deep appreciation for the young man's indispensable contributions, while the young man responds humbly, insisting he's merely a handyman and credits the master for his training. The master counters that without the young man's support, the workshop wouldn't function properly. The conversation grows tense as the master reveals that the kingdom's knights are preparing to make a move soon. The young man listens intently, surprised and concerned by the news. The older man explains that the knights plan to arrest him for incitement, a charge that shocks the young man but also confirms his suspicions that a certain matter has been exposed. The master reassures him that he has some connections to help, while the young man processes the implications with a determined expression. The weight of the situation settles in as he acknowledges the exposure of the secret issue, preparing himself for the challenges ahead. In a dimly lit tavern, a hooded figure shares that rumors of calamities and a national overthrow have been spreading, some true and some false. The older man with a horn and glasses looks on thoughtfully, expressing belief in the young man despite not understanding his actions, acknowledging that he must have had no choice. The young man sincerely apologizes for causing trouble, his expression somber as he listens. The older man reveals a map, pointing out a pioneer village near the southwestern border where an old friend resides. He explains that this friend has been seeking a transmutation artisan for some time, suggesting this could be the young man's chance to become independent. The young man considers the offer carefully, his face showing a mix of contemplation and hope. Holding the map, the young man thanks the older man deeply, overwhelmed by the kindness and effort made on his behalf. He studies the map closely, recognizing the place and feeling a weight of responsibility. When asked if he wants to go, he hesitates briefly before quietly replying no, his conflicted emotions evident. Gathering resolve, the young man smiles brightly and accepts the offer without hesitation. Expressing honor in taking this opportunity, he bows respectfully, thanking the older man for everything he has done, promising gratitude until the very end. The older man exhales in relief, admitting his worries were unfounded as the young man leaves the room with renewed determination. The young man walks through an arched corridor, reflecting on how everything connects and realizing he still has a chance. He gazes out over the sprawling cityscape, his eyes sharp and determined as the towering castle looms above. The cracked, glowing moon hangs ominously in the sky above the castle, its fracture widening as dark tendrils swirl around it. The young man looks up with a serious expression, sensing the gravity of the celestial fracture. Memories flood back as he recalls the hardships he endured after reincarnation, surviving only through the support of close allies, despite growing fond of the royal capital. He knows the city is destined to be reduced to ashes in 3 years, a fate only he is aware of as he watches the bustling streets. Suddenly, the glowing moon in the night sky fractures violently, drawing the attention of the city's inhabitants. A massive crack spreads across its surface, signaling an ominous and sudden change that unsettles everyone beneath its eerie light. Rumors spread wildly, blaming the moon's fracture as an omen of disaster or the work of monsters dwelling there, throwing the entire kingdom into turmoil. Yet, the queen acted swiftly, consulting scholars and declaring the event a sign of good fortune. The kingdom's 500th anniversary celebration coincided with this, rallying the crowd in hopeful cheers as they look on in surprise and curiosity. The uproar calmed quickly, and the event was named the Moon's Smile. The young man recalls this moment vividly, realizing the moon's image resembled a game he had played extensively in his past life. Standing among townsfolk, he reflects on the strange familiarity of this world and the unsettling fracture above. The story shifts to the game Dragonia Chronicle 2, a crafting-based RPG where the protagonist, a transmutation artisan, embarks on an adventure. The game's rich world-building and numerous branching routes made it a masterpiece, with players gathering materials and completing quests across diverse regions. The young man fondly remembers his parents, the game's director and character designer, whose voices and gentle smiles live on through the characters. After losing them in an accident, he filled the void by playing the game relentlessly, cherishing the memories evoked by every line of dialogue and carefully crafted design. The young man questions why these events are unfolding, realizing the true problem lies within the situation itself. The fractured moon reveals a sinister eye beginning to open, signaling the awakening of the Dragon of Destruction. A colossal dragon emerges amidst ruins, its presence confirming the world is hurtling toward a catastrophic bad ending, with terrified people fleeing the devastation. Despite knowing the world's end is near, the young man desperately contemplates what he can do as an ordinary citizen. He recalls deciding to spread rumors in taverns, hoping that as disasters began to manifest, more would believe and warnings would spread further. The plan was to prompt the kingdom into action before the situation deteriorated. But something went wrong early on. In a quiet room filled with books, a horned man with a sly smile addresses the young man, asking what their previous conversation was about, calling him Mr. Ordinary. The slender young man with two small horns casually dismisses the other's concern, calling it trivial business and telling him not to worry. He examines a document carefully, listing tasks like analyzing white root flowers and removing poison glands from larvae, then declares these are the same dull tasks as always and demands to be left alone. The other man tries to protest, but the horned youth's sly smile hints at resignation. The horned youth's expression darkens as he accuses the young man of being the source of the tavern rumors, his eyes gleaming with a sinister edge. The young man's shocked face reveals he has realized the truth. The horned youth is the one who snitched. The accuser mockingly sympathizes, acknowledging why the young man would be dissatisfied with the world. The horned youth smirks knowingly, suggesting the young man's troubled expression means he is about to be transferred somewhere remote. He notes the workshop master has been lenient, but calls the rumors a childish game. The young man remains silent, weighed down by the implications. The horned youth offers a mocking farewell gift, volunteering to help with transmutations to ease the loneliness if the young man is truly leaving. The horned youth grins wickedly, urging the young man to plead with him as Arnold-sama. The young man, tense and frustrated, reflects bitterly on how this man remains caught up in petty matters despite the dire situation. His eyes burn with anger as he condemns the horned youth's short-sighted actions, fearing the consequences for how many people will suffer because of them. The young man decides to avoid causing any more commotion, reflecting that thanks to someone, he's begun to see a glimmer of hope. He contemplates that this might be a good opportunity to test something important. The horned youth teasingly warns him that at this pace, he won't finish his work today and questions if it's really okay to take it slow. The young man responds with a focused gesture, prompting the horned youth to question the meaning of the motion. He realizes the sudden influx of work is likely the doing of Arnold, which means he can proceed without holding back. Grasping crystals firmly, he prepares to unleash his full power. The young man's magic control astonishes the horned youth, who watches in disbelief as the intricate transmutation work proceeds at an insane speed. The young man's movements are so fast and precise that it seems he's working hundreds of times faster than usual, leaving the horned youth stunned and questioning where such power was hidden. Surrounded by swirling magical energy, the young man completes one transmutation after another with remarkable speed and skill, causing various intricate objects to materialize and float around him, showcasing his extraordinary mastery over the craft. A sudden magical wind bursts forth from the young man, catching the horned youth off guard as he is violently thrown backward into a chaotic pile of scattered objects. The young man calmly wipes his brow, unfazed by the destruction left behind. Turning back to his work, the young man declares the task complete, leaving the horned youth stunned and demanding to know how it was done. A stern man with a beard angrily confronts the horned youth about the ruined pile of finished products. reminding him that he usually takes responsibility and stays late to redo everything. The young man, still composed, tells the bearded man that he will be leaving first, causing the horned youth to grimace in frustration and strain under the weight of the situation. The bearded man watches silently as the young man prepares to depart. Outside, the young man walks away from the building with determination, while two young cat-eared children excitedly call out to a woman nearby. Recognizing her as Nino, the young man reflects quietly on the anticlimactic end to the confrontation, his expression thoughtful as the sun sets behind the village. The young man returns to a lively scene where a burly man and a woman with fox ears are surrounded by cheerful children. The woman carries a basket of folded laundry as the man greets him, noting his early arrival. They exchange a brief, serious conversation where the young man reveals he has been assigned to a rural post, prompting a quiet moment as the children sleep peacefully nearby. Sitting together at a round table, the trio discusses the recent tavern rumors, with the burly man reassuring the young man that they will manage on their own. The fox-eared woman quietly mentions a mysterious woman with black ears who has been watching the place since morning. The young man devises a plan, instructing them to pack their belongings and meet him in the underground storage, while the burly man expresses gratitude. Outside, a hooded figure warns that entering through the front might be too risky. The young man prepares his bags in a simple room, pausing to look at the modest bed before heading downstairs. The atmosphere shifts to a warm family moment as the burly man, the fox-eared woman, and the children share a hearty meal together, laughter filling the space. Discovering a hidden latch beneath a floorboard, the young man opens a secret passage leading to the sewers below. He realizes this route might allow him to recover a lost weapon. As he descends, the burly man asks if he can make it through, and the young man confidently replies that he can handle any monsters inside. A final glance from the fox-eared woman signals her approval as the young man steps forward to begin his journey underground. The fox-eared woman clings tightly to the young man, tears streaming down her cheeks as she embraces him with heartfelt emotion. He looks surprised, softly calling her name, sensing the depth of her feelings. She apologizes repeatedly, overwhelmed by guilt, but the burly man reassures her that she has no reason to apologize, reminding her that the choice was hers alone. With tears still falling, she smiles warmly, urging him to hold his head high and give his all. The burly man offers a wrapped bundle of food, noting it's just scraps but insisting he take it since he hasn't eaten yet, and the young man gratefully accepts. The three share a quiet moment of gratitude and farewell, embracing each other tightly. The scene shifts to a wide view of a horse-drawn cart traveling toward a distant castle. While the young man sits inside, thoughtfully counting coins and reflecting on the journey ahead, a hooded figure sits nearby, silently watching as the young man contemplates the future. Opening the basket, the young man is shocked to find it filled with nearly a month's worth of earnings. Overwhelmed by the generosity, frustration and regret wash over him as he clenches his fist, lamenting the sacrifices made. Sitting beside the hooded figure in the cart, he reflects on his lack of parents in this world and how meeting the fox-eared woman, the burly man, and Master Balbana's changed his life completely. Tears stream down the young man's face as he bites into a sandwich, overwhelmed by its incredible taste. He quietly reminds himself that nothing is over yet as he gazes out over the vast landscape. A detailed map reveals the remote village he's been reassigned to, identical to the starting village in Drakuro, and he resolves that at his current level, he should be able to trigger a crucial event there. The scene shifts to a sprawling, ancient ruin overtaken by thick, twisting roots and vines, labeled as Drakuro II's toughest secret dungeon. The Grand Labyrinth, Dragon, or Palace, the imposing structure looms with broken arches and crumbling walls, hinting at the dangers within. Floating magical artifacts and weapons shimmer beside the ruined palace, symbolizing the young man's predictions that this place will be the final hope to save the world. The ruined palace stands ominously, its broken architecture entwined with massive roots, emphasizing the challenge that awaits. The young man clenches his fist with fierce determination, promising to save everyone as he looks toward the future. Behind him, a group of smiling companions, two women with fox ears, two children, and a burly man, wave in support, reinforcing the bonds he fights to protect. A horse-drawn cart travels through a vast, rocky canyon under a cloudy sky, carrying a young man who gazes thoughtfully ahead. The driver steers steadily as the landscape stretches endlessly around them. The young man recalls how he was unsure how to reach the village until he encountered Hans, a cheerful traveling merchant who eagerly offers him a ride in his carriage. Despite feeling relieved, the young man senses something is amiss, suspecting a possible threat from the Royal Knight Order. The merchant explains he didn't know much about the cloaked woman traveling with them but felt compelled to help her. While the young man observes her quietly, Noting she doesn't seem to be pursued and that Hans remains oblivious to any danger, he contemplates her condition and the unusual circumstances surrounding their journey. The young man examines a mystical, dragon-shaped command menu visible only to him, reflecting on how witnessing the moon's anomaly and regaining his memories revealed this world's true nature as Drakuro. He notices his companions have leveled up slightly, marking a significant clue in his quest. The young man contemplates the fragile balance of the world, aware that the scales tipping further would mean instant collapse and apocalypse. He acknowledges his crucial role in preventing this and resolves to stay sharp, deciding to double-check his commands just in case. He reflects on his ability to instantly transmute materials into crafted items by registering recipes, a function that allowed him to rapidly convert the overwhelming amount of materials dumped on him as power harassment. With focused determination, he prepares to move on to the next task. The young man reviews his inventory, which includes a vast array of weapons and tools stored in an extra-dimensional space. A detailed world map displays his current location. Though unexplored areas remain hidden until discovered, he also checks his party status, noting that he can manage equipment, upgrade stats, and adjust formations for his recruited members. Despite knowing the importance of allies, he admits that for now, he is the only name on the party list, causing him to hesitate. He then asks how long until they arrive, and the hooded figure reveals it will be about 3 more hours. The figure then ominously mentions that a child is about to be born soon, startling the young man. The young man reacts with alarm to the mention of a child about to be born, quickly asking if the cloaked woman is all right. The hooded figure responds calmly, thanking him for his concern. While the cheerful merchant immediately offers to stop the carriage, the young man hurriedly prepares to disinfect cloth, asking if he can use his heating ability to boil water, and the cloaked woman politely requests his help, which he readily agrees to. The young man senses something unusual about the cloaked woman, noticing the absence of the desperate tension that usually precedes childbirth. She slowly removes her hood, revealing her long hair and calm expression, as the young man watches her closely. The woman kneels, her pregnant belly clearly visible, and she smiles gently, radiating a peaceful aura. The young man is momentarily distracted by her serene presence, his gaze lingering on her face. Realizing the woman belongs to the demon race, he notes her distinctive ears, tail, and dark skin. Suddenly, the situation shifts as they discover the large object she carries is actually a monster egg, startling all three. The young man's expression hardens as he recognizes the danger, understanding that this development could have serious consequences. Ferocious wolf-like monsters with wild manes and sharp teeth attack mercilessly when they detect magic energy, pinning down the young man and the merchant in a dangerous zone known as a magic energy pool. The young man warns that if a vicious monster hatches here, it could cause disaster, and he asks the cloaked woman what he can do to help. She reacts with surprise to his question. The woman urges him to touch the monster egg and pour his magic into it, explaining that her magic alone isn't enough. He agrees, determined to give it everything he has, focusing intently as he prepares to channel his magic. He recalls that if the inside of the shell fills with human magic, the monster's aggression should weaken. As he pours his magic into the egg, the young man insists that failure is not an option. Leaping forward with resolve, the woman watches with wide eyes as his hand touches the egg, sensing something extraordinary beginning to happen. Brilliant magic waves radiate from his hands in 6 distinct colors, dazzling the woman who has never seen such beautiful magic before. The magic swirls around them like a radiant rainbow, filling the space around the cart as the merchant looks on in awe. The young man channels his magic intensely into the monster egg, swirling with radiant energy as he questions who this person truly is. Suddenly, the egg cracks open, startling both him and the calm demon woman who urges him to wait. The shell shatters violently, sending fragments flying as 2 small tiger-like children leap out, tumbling onto the young man who exclaims in surprise. The playful twins call out to him affectionately, while he struggles to keep them at bay. Bewildered, the young man reacts with wide eyes as one of the tiger children speaks, begging him not to eat them. The demon woman laughs softly, explaining that the twins' heaviness is due to there being 2, not 1, which surprises the young man and the traveling merchant. The young man asks the merchant if these children are monsters, who explains that since they hatched from an egg, they are likely not human. The demon woman observes them thoughtfully, noting they don't resemble angels or demons, and wonders quietly what exactly these 2 are. The young man questions why the 2 tiger-like children have come to him instead of their supposed master, the demon woman. She explains that his magic power has exceeded the amount she initially poured into them, causing the children to recognize him as their new master. Surprised, he wonders if the master really changes based on magic power, while she reassures him that she was the one who asked for his help and that he need not worry. He apologizes softly, admitting these children were meant to be the precious ones she raised. The demon woman expresses her deep admiration for the immense wave of magic he displayed, asking if he is an exceptional mage or a transmutation artisan. He modestly denies being anything special and asks if she is also heading to the royal capital for work. She suddenly realizes the capital lies in the opposite direction from where they are traveling, her expression shifting to shock as the carriage moves forward into the unknown. The woman laughs lightly, accepting that there is no helping her poor sense of direction and admits she cannot get off the carriage either. She reflects on how, despite taking the wrong path, fate brought them together, and she feels a strong sense of destiny with him. The young man wonders if she is truly okay, while she smiles warmly, emphasizing the powerful bond she senses between them. He is startled by her words about fate and meeting, questioning what she means. His thoughts flash to the way she calls him my dear, her naivety with directions, and the recent event of raising a monster egg. He suddenly recognizes her as one of Drakuro's main heroine candidates from the game, a powerful 14-year-old monster tamer who learns the skill of subjugation. He recalls that she was added to his party list, now understanding the significance of their encounter. The young man calls out in surprise to the tall elf woman standing before him, addressing her as Paula. Two small tiger-like children and a bird-like child stand nearby, watching the interaction with curiosity. The elf woman, her expression softening with a blush, questions how he knows her name, clearly taken aback by his familiarity. The tall elf woman, with a gentle yet curious expression, asks the young man why he knows her name. While the two small tiger-like children stand quietly beside her, the young man, caught off guard, realizes he accidentally spoke her name aloud and quickly tries to cover it up, nervously explaining that he simply has a natural ability to know names. She beams warmly, praising him for his incredible power without hesitation, leaving him stunned that she accepted his explanation so easily. He then notices the two children, recalling their names as he calls out to them, recognizing them as Yoru and Ku. The children respond eagerly, running toward him with excitement. Surprised, the young man questions when the children became official party members, while the elf woman explains that they were given good names derived from earlier moments, Yuna meaning don't come closer and Kuna meaning don't eat me. She wonders aloud if this is truly how they are naming them, smiling softly as the two children happily pose together. The carriage continues its journey across a vast landscape as the young man reflects that the children seem fine with their new names. He then asks the elf woman about her plans for the royal capital, reminding her that carrying an egg that could hatch dangerous monsters was risky. She explains that her uncle lives there, and that she intended to visit him to express her gratitude, recalling that he was the one who encouraged her to embark on this journey alone. The elf woman reveals she secretly brought the egg of a legendary beast known as the embodiment of destruction, with her as a travel companion when she left home. Despite it being kept under strict protection, she gently pats one of the small tiger-costume children while explaining her bold choice, prompting the young man to ask what motivated her journey. When asked, she smiles warmly and asks him what brought him on his journey. He hesitates but admits he wants to save his family, not the world as he initially started to say, feeling a bit embarrassed by his slip. The elf woman reacts with surprise at his grand intentions, while he awkwardly clarifies that his actions are for his family. Though he worries he revealed too much, she reflects that the strong fate she sensed that day was not a mistake, thinking of her uncle Leocudio. When the young man asks if something is wrong, she denies any trouble and then suddenly offers to join him on his journey. He is caught off guard by the unexpected proposal, but considers how having a skilled monster tamer like her would greatly aid his plans. She reassures him with a smile, asking if he will be okay with her joining, despite his solo journey. The elf woman smiles softly, confessing she has already fulfilled her reason for traveling, her expression gentle and sincere as petals drift around her. The young man reflects on the mystery surrounding her but acknowledges she was a reliable party member, deciding that if she says she's fine, it must be true. She returns his smile warmly, sitting gracefully with a subtle, playful tail flick. He extends his hand to her, expressing his reliance on her as a companion. While she eagerly agrees, looking forward to working together, the carriage continues down a winding path, revealing a quaint village nestled among hills, prompting excited reactions from the group as they spot their destination. The young man remarks on the nostalgic feeling of the starting village, asking if she knows the place, to which she responds with a quiet acknowledgement. His thoughts shift to memories of familiar villagers, a blacksmith, a gossip-loving man, and a tavern worker, while villagers chat about recent events, including a monster child taken in by Elise, encouraging him to rest after his efforts. Surrounded by friendly faces, the young man expresses hope to reunite with many people here, his eyes wide with anticipation. The elf woman remarks that this place must be precious to him, and he agrees, surprised by the depth of his own feelings as the carriage approaches the village gates, signaling a meaningful return. The village lies in a somber stillness, its inhabitants slumped and weary, scattered across the streets and resting on doorsteps, their faces marked by exhaustion and despair. A woman clutches a small object, tears streaming down her face, while others sit with heavy hearts, burdened by an unseen weight. The young man and the elf woman stand at the edge of a forest, eyes wide with shock as they discover the river has dried up completely, the cracked riverbed stretching barren beneath leafless trees. She urgently calls his attention to the dire sight, while a figure in a wide-brimmed hat approaches, acknowledging the young man by name and revealing that Master Balbanas has spoken of him. Seated at a table inside a modest building, the village chief named Dirk explains that the village depends entirely on the river for water, which began drying up suddenly at the start of the year. The young man recalls the bad-ending route, realizing the water anomaly is the most noticeable sign of the world's decay following the awakening of the Dragon of Destruction. The young man reflects on the rapid pollution, decay, and drought that have led to widespread famine. Understanding that the village's plight is linked to the world's balance, he recalls how in the past, solving a village's problems restored equilibrium, but if left unchecked, the destruction will only accelerate. Determined, he resolves to take action, standing beside the elf woman as they prepare to face the crisis ahead. The young man slowly awakens, his eyes fluttering open as the elf woman smiles gently down at him, teasing if he is finally awake after their long conversation. He notices the dim, warm sensation around him and realizes he has been resting on her lap without knowing it. Embarrassed, he quickly apologizes, but she reassures him not to worry since he looked exhausted. He reflects on the seriousness of the situation and the many people he still needs to meet, while a woman offers him a bowl of barley porridge to help him regain strength. The young man meets the tavern keeper, a sturdy woman with a warm smile who is Han's older sister. She welcomes him kindly, mentioning how she's heard about his difficult journey from her brother. Nearby, a blacksmith and an elderly man urge him to choose something from their food offerings, despite the old man's drunken hiccups. Friends and villagers arrive with generous gifts of stewed beans and salted pork, urging him not to worry about the harvest's poor yield. The young man apologizes for the commotion, touched by their kindness and the lively atmosphere that contrasts with the earlier hardships he witnessed. The young man is encouraged by a woman with a warm smile to take his time and relax, as she explains that this is the first time a transmutation artisan has visited the village, lifting everyone's spirits and putting them in a good mood. Around a large table, villagers laugh and chat animatedly, sharing food and enjoying each other's company, their faces bright with hope despite recent hardships. The young man reflects quietly, a gentle smile on his face as he acknowledges the unchanged warm and welcoming atmosphere of the village. But his expression hardens with determination, realizing he cannot allow the current state of the village to continue or it will eventually perish. Frustrated, he struggles to recall the exact location he must reach to save the village, feeling the weight of uncertainty, while the elf woman smiles softly, expressing a desire to talk more with everyone in the village, including Hans and the village chief, deepening their connection to the community. Suddenly inspired, he exclaims that the solution is to talk to the village chief, recalling a key event from Drakuro 2 that led to discovering the location. He calls for Paula to come with him as they burst through a door, immediately catching the attention of the village chief, who looks up in surprise at their arrival. The young man's eyes blaze with determination as he declares he needs to ask something crucial, realizing the key to solving the village's problems lies ahead. The scene shifts to an ancient, overgrown entrance entwined with thick tree roots and crumbling stone, marking the way to the dungeon. The group, including the elf woman and two small companions, stands before the ominous dungeon entrance, surrounded by twisted roots and broken ruins. The young man warns everyone to stay alert for monsters that could appear at any moment. The elf woman nods gently, affirming they have arrived beyond the critical point. The elf woman beams with excitement, marveling at the breathtaking view before them, while the young man smiles knowingly, recognizing the place as the Dragon Orb Palace. A dramatic scroll reveals the Dragon Orb Palace as Drakuro 2's most challenging hidden dungeon, a vast labyrinth extending over 100 floors underground, teeming with monstrous creatures but abundant in high-quality materials. Standing at the dungeon's edge, the young man confidently assures the elf woman that this labyrinth holds the key to saving the village, having prepared thoroughly for the exploration, while she admires the sparkling stones scattered throughout. Suddenly, a lively young woman bursts onto the scene, playfully calling herself a little troublemaker and urging them to hurry and explore another area, her enthusiasm infectious as she beckons them onward. The lively young woman, Mia, is playfully scolded for getting too excited, reminded that their purpose is to investigate, She admits feeling a bit scared of monsters but resolves to stay alert. The young man silently wonders how things ended up like this, while Mia enthusiastically rallies everyone to carefully charge ahead. Mia cheerfully offers supplies and expresses happiness that they came to the village. A flashback reveals she is Yute's daughter, once a lively shopkeeper in Drakuro too. Since she knows the village well, they asked her to guide them, though she admits there hasn't been much work lately and she's mostly been lighting the stove. The group continues their journey through the forest, with Mia leading the way. The young man notes Mia's boundless energy, matching his own, as she excitedly points out a huge hole in the ground. Both are surprised Mia didn't know about it before. Marking the entrance to the underground labyrinth, she confirms they should be arriving soon, while the young man reflects on her boredom and the quietness of the village. He speaks to Mia with a nostalgic tone, asking her to listen carefully as they reach a dangerous point. She looks surprised but attentive as he warns her not to follow beyond this point. The group parts ways at the labyrinth entrance, with the young man, the elf woman, and their companions cautiously entering the vast, ancient maze entwined with roots and mysterious carvings. The young man firmly tells Mia she must not follow them any further. Though she protests nervously, she struggles to explain herself, her expression softening as she admits she couldn't leave them alone, clutching her dress tightly in a vulnerable moment. Both exchange a tense, blushing glance before Mia eagerly presents various stones to the young man, asking if they can be used as materials, her excitement undimmed despite his hesitant refusals. Undeterred by his rejections, she declares she'll search deeper inside the labyrinth herself, springing forward with determination, only to lose her footing and fall backward, prompting a worried shout for her to regain control. As she lies sprawled among the rubble, concern fills the young man's mind over the danger of bringing her along. Recalling how she was never a combatant in Drakuro too, he offers his hand to help her up, and she gratefully accepts, though he silently acknowledges how fragile she truly is. The young man senses something unusual, though he quickly dismisses it as imagination, but the small companion in a cat costume suddenly shouts out, spotting an intruder approaching. A classic slime monster bounces onto the scene, drawing shocked reactions from the group as they recognize it as a typical weak enemy in RPGs, fitting for their first battle. A massive, menacing face looms over them with a terrifying grin, causing the group to brace themselves in alarm. The two small companions tighten their fists, readying for the fight, while the young man and the elf woman prepare to defend themselves. The cat-costumed companion is violently thrown back by a powerful attack, crashing into the ground amid flying debris and shattered stone, emphasizing the overwhelming force of the enemy's strike. The young man nervously reassures the group that this is just a final dungeon slime, though his fear is evident as the lively woman clings to him. Panicking about dying, the elf woman checks on the fallen companion, who groans in pain but is alive. The young man recalls that once these slimes go berserk, they swarm and brutally crush their prey before digesting everything. The group notices more slimes gathering around them, prompting the young man to consider whether they should retreat and find another route. The young man confidently declares they will break through the swarm of blue slimes, surprising the elf woman, the lively young woman, and the small companions. He explains that these slimes prefer purified water, hinting at a nearby source called labyrinth water that could be a lifesaver if found. Despite the combined strength of Paula, Yoru, and Ku, the group cannot defeat the aggressive monsters surrounding them. The young man commands a status check, preparing to assess their abilities before continuing. He reviews his own stats as a transmutation artisan, acknowledging his weak combat skills but emphasizing the preparations he made before the exploration. The young man then examines Paula's stats, noting her high magic-related stats but lack of magic attack skills, and compares the modest abilities of Yoru and Ku, who share similar strengths and special skills. He reflects on the timing, expecting the effects of his preparations to start soon. Suddenly, numbers representing stats flash rapidly, signaling a change. The elf woman warns Paula to watch out as an attack approaches, but Paula realizes she cannot dodge in time, bracing for impact. The woman swings her weapon with fierce determination, unleashing a powerful attack that sends several slime monsters flying backward, shattering the ground beneath them. Her eyes widen in surprise at the unexpected strength of her strike. The young woman reacts in awe, questioning if the strength she just displayed was always within her. While the young man calmly explains it is the effect of a strengthening potion, she recalls receiving something before their departure and holds the bottle up, still trying to grasp the situation. A detailed view of the ornate potion bottle appears, described as a transmuted concoction made from medicinal natural ingredients that greatly enhances attack and defense. The young man explains its essential role in their dungeon exploration, revealing he prepared many in advance for the group. Hoping to make the fight easier, the group braces themselves, readying for the battle despite the potion's boost. As the young man struggles under the pressure, the group remains surrounded and on the defensive. The young man frantically searches for a way to turn the tide. Suddenly, the young woman gasps as a status screen appears before her, revealing that Mia too has a mysterious status screen, filled with question marks and unknown stats, shocking everyone with this unexpected development. The young man swiftly summons a bottle of purified water, a vial of man-headed flower's nectar, and a black-winged goat's tail, beginning a precise magical analysis to extract their essences. He expertly mixes the ingredients, swirling them with intense focus as magical energy spirals around his hands, the concoction beginning to take form. The elf woman watches in awe, marveling at the young man's flawless magical control, while he silently prays for the transmutation to succeed and save the village, realizing this could be a crucial breakthrough linked to Mia's mysterious status screen. Turning to the young woman, he reveals that she holds the key to changing their dire situation, urging her forward with determination, leaving her wide-eyed and surprised as she prepares to step up and face the challenge. The young woman panics loudly, overwhelmed by fear as she admits she's never fought a monster before, her hands raised defensively. The young man calmly wonders if Mia might be capable despite her fear, while she insists she'll explain later, determined to transmute first. He warns that transmuting during battle is risky, explaining how reinforcing potions effects weakens while casting support spells. The group braces as he begins the transmutation, and the young woman reflects on the need to endure until the process completes. The elf woman and companions fight fiercely, holding their ground as the young man channels magic into the transmutation, urging everyone to give their all. He realizes Paula saved him just in time, pushing himself to muster a little more strength. The transmutation finishes, and the young man hands the ornate potion to the young woman, urging her to take it quickly. She drinks eagerly, and he assures her that with this, Mia's abilities will be enhanced, giving her the power to fight back. The young woman forcefully gulps down the potion, but immediately gags and spits it out, overwhelmed by its disgusting taste, tears streaming down her face as she declares she can't drink it. The young man watches in shock, unable to believe what just happened. The young man realizes the extra ingredient he added for immediate effect drastically altered the potion's flavor, and he worries whether he should remake it. He notes that unlike the others, this potion needed to work instantly, but everyone is already near their limit, so starting over isn't an option. Surrounded by hostile monsters, the group contemplates retreat as their only choice, fear and uncertainty gripping them. The young woman clutches the potion bottle tightly, her eyes wide with despair as she questions if this is all they managed to gather. Back in the village, a woman expresses frustration over the water situation, acknowledging that despite all efforts, they can't expect much improvement. She bows her head in defeat, silently calling out to her mother, while stepping out into the light with a somber expression. The determined elf woman and the small cat-costume child both launch attacks simultaneously, their resolve clear as the young man shouts that it's Mia fighting for the sake of everyone in the village. Meanwhile, the young woman clutches the potion bottle tightly, tears welling in her eyes as she prepares to change their dire situation. She drinks deeply from the potion, her eyes wide with shock as she struggles to swallow the bitter liquid all at once, tears streaming down her face while the young man anxiously asks if she's okay. Suddenly, she bursts out laughing and coughing, spitting some of the potion out, but the young man quickly reassures her that the potion is working and asks if she can handle it. She nods hesitantly, still overwhelmed but determined. With renewed resolve, she clenches her fist and promises to do her best, prompting the young man to express relief that they might just make it as the hostile fiery monsters charge toward them. The young woman summons a swirling flame with intense concentration, her determined expression showing as the young man stands close behind her. Guiding her hands, the magical energy spirals outward, visibly increasing her power, prompting the young man to silently acknowledge Mia's remarkable strength. The young man reflects on how, in this world, Mia not only becomes an ally but reveals that her class is actually something unexpected. The group braces as a powerful wave of fire magic erupts from her hands, the number 30 flashing to indicate a surge in her magical ability. The fiery torrent takes shape into a massive, roaring wave of flame, clearly demonstrating that she is a mage. A status box appears beside her, detailing her class as mage at level 1, with stats showing a high magic attack boosted by the potion and listing her special skills. The fiery wave crashes down on the hostile monsters, engulfing them completely. The magic attack enhancement potion lies discarded on the ground as the young man and the elf woman watch in awe, their faces lit with hope and amazement at the power Mia now wields. The group walks through the dungeon, with the young man praising Mia for her incredible magic display, while she beams with pride, wondering if she's a genius like in the game. She then pulls out a lantern, asking if he recognizes it. He explains that the lantern glows using a luminous stone that reacts only to magic power, revealing her magic ability when she touched it earlier. He recalls how he could see her status after that moment, confirming her fire element affinity. Mia laughs shyly, downplaying her achievement as the young man warns her not to get carried away. The group prepares to move deeper into the dungeon, excitement and caution mixing as they face the unknown ahead. They encounter a massive, looming slime-like creature blocking their path, and the young woman points it out as a possible floor boss. The group notices smaller slimes nearby. Realizing this is the labyrinth's water element challenge, the young man contemplates that defeating this creature might be the key to progressing further. The group recoils as the massive slime creature suddenly shifts, its form becoming more menacing and unstable. The young man stares wide-eyed, alarmed by the dangerous transformation, while the young woman screams in shock, realizing the creature has transformed into something far more threatening. The young woman summons a powerful fire attack, sending a massive wave of flame crashing toward the monstrous slime, which begins to shift and melt under the assault. The group watches anxiously as the slime's form distorts, flames flickering around it. Suddenly, the ground beneath them cracks violently, throwing the group off balance as they fall backward, shocked and struggling to regain footing. The young man and the young woman reach out desperately, their faces filled with alarm as the chaos unfolds. The slime reveals its true, terrifying form, towering over them with a dark, ominous presence far beyond anything they've faced before. The group, coughing and shaken, tries to assess the threat, realizing this creature is on a completely different level. The young woman cries out in frustration as her fire attacks fail to harm the slime, prompting the young man to prepare a new strategy. He focuses his energy, readying a powerful magical staff, determined to turn the tide against the overwhelming foe. The young man summons a large, intricate staff glowing with swirling energy, his hand poised to unleash its power, while the woman watches in awe, surprised by the sudden appearance of the magical weapon. The group gathers around as he reveals the staff's name. The Staff of Lightning Summoning, a powerful emergency magic tool he found in the royal capital's underground waterways, though he warns it's not a simple solution. He explains that the staff's magic cost is enormous and it must be fired in a single shot, prompting the young woman to react with shock and concern, while he stresses the need to create a weak point on the enemy to make that shot count. Facing the towering slime and its smaller minions, the young man admits they have no way to deal real damage against such a tough foe without exploiting its weak point, the group bracing themselves for the difficult battle ahead. Paula confidently states that they only need to create a weak point on the giant slime. Surprising the young man with her insight, she suggests using the smaller slimes nearby to help, expressing her belief that she can pull off the plan. The young man, impressed and hopeful, asks her to take charge and give him orders. She steps forward determinedly, wielding a whip as the smaller slimes glare menacingly around her, ready to act on her command. Her expression is calm and focused, signaling her readiness to face the threat head-on. The young man and the young woman watch anxiously as the situation escalates, with the young man admitting he has no idea what's happening but trusts Paula's confidence. Suddenly, the giant slime lunges forward aggressively, prompting the young man to shout out to Mia in alarm. The young man is violently thrown back by the slime's attack, crashing into the ground as the young woman cries out in shock and concern. Both are shaken, with the young man blaming himself for the turn of events while the young woman looks on worriedly, calling out to him. The young man, bruised and struggling, insists he's fine despite the pain, explaining he had poured all his reinforcement magic into an iron defense spell to protect himself. The young woman listens intently, her expression serious as he admits he lacks offensive skills and can only support the team. She encourages him, hopeful that if they can hold out, victory might be possible for now. The young woman leaps into action, summoning a swirling flame in her hand, determined to trust Paula's plan and hold their ground. Her face is resolute and focused, while the young man watches her with determination. Nearby, the smaller slimes prepare to engage, their forms lively and ready. The young woman's fire begins to flicker and fade, signaling her magic power is spent, causing alarm in both her and the young man. The giant slime looms closer, and the young woman is clearly at her limit, struggling to maintain her attack as the threat intensifies. Suddenly, the smaller slimes turn on the massive slime, attacking it fiercely, surprising the young woman and the young man. She quickly realizes this isn't a loss of her power but the smaller creature's infighting, a development that could shift the battle's momentum in their favor. Two small slimes introduce themselves as Su and La, revealing they are the young woman's familiars. She smiles warmly, explaining their bond as the young man and the young woman react with surprise and curiosity about these friends. The young man acknowledges the success of their plan, while the young woman confidently instructs him to leave the rest to her. She skillfully commands the smaller slimes to attack, their movements swift and coordinated against the giant slime. The smaller slimes launch a fierce assault, striking the giant slime repeatedly. The young man watches in amazement, realizing that the young woman has managed to control two of the ferocious slimes to weaken their massive foe. The young woman stands poised and determined, her expression fierce as she commands her familiars with precision. The slimes move obediently at her side, fully under her control, ready to continue the battle with renewed strength and strategy. The young man realizes Paula's unique skill, subjugation, is the same power Dracoro II possessed, allowing her to command monsters based on her level. He is stunned to discover she has mastered this ability to an extraordinary degree. Spotting a hole at the top of the giant slime's head, the young man grips the staff tightly, channeling all his magic power into a single, maximum output strike, preparing to unleash a thunderous attack. With precise timing, he swings the staff as the smaller slimes leap into action, the young woman standing behind him ready to continue supporting the assault against the massive foe. Lightning crackles violently as the staff's energy strikes the giant slime's weak point, the young woman commanding the smaller slimes to attack relentlessly, their coordinated efforts intensifying the battle's momentum. The group stands over the defeated giant slime, catching their breath after a fierce battle. The young man acknowledges the toughness of their opponent and admits he never expected to use his staff so early. Grateful that the young woman found a way to weaken it, she humbly credits his trust in her for their success, while he insists they had no other choice. The young woman laughs softly, explaining that the moment he drew the staff, the solution became clear to her, something most people wouldn't figure out so quickly. The young woman is teased about possibly being psychic, but she dismisses it as a lucky guess. The young man reflects quietly, wondering if he's overthinking things, as her instincts seem unusually sharp, and admits there's still much he doesn't understand about her. The young woman smiles warmly, sensing the young man's concern and asking if something is wrong. He quickly denies it, brushing off his thoughts as overthinking. She urges the group to focus on the labyrinth's water, emphasizing the urgency to hurry and save everyone back at the village. The group prepares to move forward, determined to continue their mission. The young woman playfully calls the young man sensei, and excitedly points out the abundance of clean water nearby. She suggests taking a moment to rest, then suddenly shifts the conversation, asking if it's time for him to reveal his secret too. The young man, caught off guard, questions what she means by secret, while she hints at the knowledge he possesses, teasingly prompting him to share more. The young man's eyes widen in realization as the woman with long hair and a confident smile reveals that the true mystery lies deeper within the labyrinth. The smaller familiars and the young woman stand poised at the edge of a descending spiral staircase, their expressions a mix of curiosity and determination, ready to uncover what secrets the labyrinth holds. The young man wonders how Paula could know about the deeper secrets within the labyrinth, suspecting she refers to a hidden place, but he questions how she learned of it. Paula, with a playful smile, confirms his guess and hints that she discovered it while traveling alongside him. Observing the young man closely, Paula reveals she has come to understand his thoughts and strategies by watching his subtle gestures and movements, even predicting new orders from his clenched fist. She smiles warmly, admitting she has learned to read him well, which he finds both impressive and unsettling. The young man is startled by how closely Paula has been watching him, but she explains it was to be ready to support him immediately if anything happened. Though embarrassed by her intense gaze, he admits it's difficult to ask her to stop. Standing amidst the ruins, the young man reflects on the moment he found the labyrinth's water. Noting Paula's reaction seemed less than pleased, she acknowledges it, and he senses there is more to her feelings about that discovery than she lets on. The young man admits his hesitation was visible, and the woman with long hair and intricate tattoos gently points out that she sensed he was unsure about something. He explains he wasn't trying to hide his feelings, but was definitely uncertain, prompting her to conclude he might be hiding something. They stand in the labyrinth's crumbling stone corridor, acknowledging the situation's complexity and how difficult it might be to explain everything to the young woman named Mia, who has already disappeared ahead. They decide to catch up, noting that everyone else is heading toward the labyrinth water. The group arrives at a stunning underground oasis, where clear water cascades over rocks and glimmers around large crystals. The young woman excitedly declares the labyrinth water an amazing sight, like an oasis, while the young man notes that since the boss was defeated, the monsters likely won't attack anymore, allowing them to relax slightly. The young woman eagerly scoops up the sparkling water with a joyful smile, ready to drink despite the young man's cautious reminder that they haven't confirmed its safety yet. The young woman eagerly drinks the sparkling water, declaring it delicious despite the young man's surprised protest. He explains that the slimes have purification properties, so the water should be safe. She sighs with relief, smiling as she recalls how long it's been since she last tasted such good water. She beams with joy, excited that now everyone in the village can be saved, and expresses her desire to bring some to her mother as soon as possible. The group watches her happily, but the young man notices her expression darken slightly and gently urges her to listen. She turns to him, sensing his concern and asking what's wrong. He solemnly tells her that the labyrinth water alone won't be enough to save all the villagers. She looks up at him with wide eyes, her smile fading as she absorbs the gravity of his words. The young man's determined gaze contrasts with her worried expression as she kneels by the water, contemplating the challenge ahead. The young woman reacts with shock, questioning why clean water wouldn't suffice. The young man explains that the abnormal water is only a sign of a greater threat approaching. He insists they must reach a certain destination to confirm its existence and protect everyone from the impending disaster, his voice firm with resolve. The young man apologizes, explaining he wasn't lying and confirms the situation is as serious as he described. The woman with the headband lowers her gaze, processing the gravity of their predicament. He warns that reaching the place they need to investigate means diving several more floors, which will be dangerous, suggesting they might need to turn back for now. The young woman with the headband brightens with determination, insisting they must go to that place despite the risks. The young man hesitates, still considering turning back, but she firmly states that if the labyrinth water alone isn't enough, they have no choice but to continue. She cheerfully admits that casting magic nonstop is also part of the fun. Winking playfully, the small familiars cheer enthusiastically, encouraging everyone to go forward. The woman with long hair nods in agreement, expressing her support for the decision if that's what the young woman truly wants. The young man steels himself, deciding to move forward with resolve. The young woman points toward the sparkling water, asking if they can bring it back to the village, but he confidently tells her to leave that task to him as they prepare to advance deeper into the labyrinth. The young man confidently summons a shimmering slime, its gelatinous form swirling as the young woman watches in surprise. A radiant blue magic stone chunk appears alongside the slime's translucent body, signaling a valuable acquisition. The group reacts with astonishment as the young man holds the slime and the crystal, explaining that monsters often contain magic stones or become transmutation materials themselves. He reveals that defeating monsters allows them to harvest these important resources. Smiling brightly, the young man demonstrates how these materials can benefit the village by initiating a transmutation merge, combining the slime and crystals with a glowing aura of magic swirling around them. A newly formed slime hide bag materializes, its flexible surface capable of stretching and shrinking freely. The young man explains that with this bag, they can carry as much water as needed, bringing joy and excitement to the young woman and others as they prepare to bring plenty back to the village. The elf woman explains that water can also serve as transmutation material, meaning the more they carry, the more it benefits the young woman. She smiles with determination, challenging her to see who can carry the most, sparking a friendly competition with the young woman in the frilly dress, who eagerly accepts. The young man watches with a mix of amusement and slight concern as the two prepare to gather more water. The two women rush forward, each holding bags filled with sparkling water. The young woman in the dress excitedly urging to go while the elf woman requests more bags be prepared. The young man internally notes that they are just gathering water, but the enthusiasm is infectious. The young woman suddenly feels a strange sensation from the bag she holds, surprised by the unfamiliar feeling emanating from it. Struggling to grasp the water-filled bag, the young woman exclaims her frustration at its slippery texture. Unable to hold it properly, the elf woman curiously asks if it is really that tricky to handle, while the young woman marvels at the bag's softness and perfect fit, realizing that holding something like this feels surprisingly pleasant. The elf woman, overwhelmed by the sensation, leans back as if melting into the softness of the bag, her whole body relaxing completely. The young man calmly urges her to focus and continue gathering water, reminding her not to space out. She snaps back to reality, smiling sheepishly as she acknowledges her distraction, determined to keep going despite the bag's soothing effect. The young woman grimaces as she struggles to hold the water-filled bag, admitting it feels unpleasant despite the importance of the mission for the village and for the young man's sake. Both she and the elf woman focus intently, determined to gather a large amount of water quickly. The young man warns them to be careful, reminding them the bag has a durability limit. The two women continue hauling numerous water bags with great effort, but the young man's warning about the difficulty of carrying so much back goes unheard. Suddenly, one bag bursts open, splashing water everywhere, causing shock and dismay among them. Both women collapse onto the wet floor, exhausted and soaked, while the elf woman smiles apologetically at the young man. He looks on with a mix of amusement and mild frustration, silently acknowledging their overzealousness. The young man closes his eyes, suggesting they might need to start over, while the two women apologize sincerely with tired but cheerful smiles. The scene ends with the group surrounded by the many water bags they managed to gather, the young woman happily declaring they collected loads and loads, and the young man acknowledging they have gathered enough for now. The young man notices Yoru and Kuu and asks what they are doing, while the young woman cheerfully urges the two to come along. Suddenly, the two small companions are seen eagerly eating a giant slime, surprising everyone. Concerned, the young woman warns them about upsetting their stomachs, while the young man questions if the slime is even tasty as they watch the two continue. The young man reflects that both Yoru and Kuu possess a mysterious eat skill, which might prove useful later. He encourages them to keep eating despite the young woman's hesitation. As they prepare to move on, the young woman urgently calls out to him, sensing something might be wrong. The young man asks what's wrong as they begin heading to the second floor. Both women admit they have run out of magic power, worried they might become dead weight. The young man reassures them with a confident smile, promising he has a plan. He raises his hand, declaring that with his help, Mia will be able to fire off magic non-stop again, leaving her curious and hopeful. Flames suddenly ignite on the fingers of the young woman and the elf woman, both startled by the unexpected fire magic. The young man watches as she excitedly shows the flames, amazed at how quickly her strength has returned. Holding up a potion bottle, the young man explains it as a magic recovery potion made from labyrinth water and a local moss, promising it will restore lost magic power. The young woman gleefully declares her era has arrived, confident in her newfound unlimited magic power, while the young man reminds her that her earlier fire bullets were ineffective. The group stands together inside a cavernous labyrinth, the young man carrying a lantern as the young woman clings to his arm, both alert to their surroundings. The two small companions express concern over poor visibility and strange voices echoing around them as they prepare to move forward with their magic power restored. The jagged stalagmites and stalactites of the labyrinth's second floor loom ominously as the young man warns the young woman to stay vigilant. She confidently claims she is unbeatable, but he cautions her about the dangers of not paying attention, just as a monstrous clawed foot appears nearby, signaling imminent threat. A massive skeletal dog snarls menacingly, its jaw wide open and claws raised as it prepares to attack. The elf woman shouts out urgently, calling for Paula, who responds with a determined yes, while the young man and the young woman look on in shock and concern. Paula swiftly strikes the skeletal beast with her whip, shattering its bones and causing it to collapse lifelessly. The young man holds up the collected loot, noting the acquisition of a skeleton dog bone and a chunk of black magic stone, while the young woman laments that maybe she does want to go home after all, teasing him about his claim of being unbeatable. The group stands united, fending off a swarm of skeletal dog enemies with coordinated attacks and magic. The young man recalls their previous battles on this floor, realizing they have defeated most of the monsters, while the elf woman comments that this floor is filled only with dog-type creatures. The young man asks the young woman to stop clinging to him so much, but she protests playfully. Suddenly, a massive flock of bat-like monsters descends from above, surrounding the group and causing them to brace for the new threat. The young man shouts that the real trouble is these creatures, realizing there are still many more enemies to face as the bats screech and close in on them. The young man urgently prepares a swirling magic around his hands, declaring that before the signal arrives, everyone must quickly take what he offers. A cheerful young woman excitedly receives the weapon, amazed that it's strong enough to fight with eyes closed, while the magic slices through the air in a dazzling display. Dark, slimy orbs appear in the hands of two women, who look on with wide eyes and sweat as the strange objects pulse ominously. Suddenly, the young woman dashes forward, desperate to grab more slime despite the young man's frantic protests and pleas for her to stop, while the other woman points urgently toward a direction. The elf woman spots a cluster of large bats hanging from the ceiling, alerting the group to the presence of the boss bat. The young man's eyes widen as he realizes the importance of stopping its movements, preparing for the looming confrontation. The massive bat's grotesque face looms close, its mouth wide open as it emits a terrifying signal that causes the other bats to awaken and stir. The young man shouts a warning to everyone as the swarm begins to react, signaling the start of a dangerous battle. Surrounded by a swarm of grotesque bats, the group stands firm as the young man urgently commands them to use their weapons. But the terrifying creatures unleash a deafening sonic wave that causes everyone to cover their ears in agony. The intense sound wave shakes the ground, making it impossible for the group to stand properly. The young man explains that these ringing bats attack with powerful sound waves that disrupt the brain and make fighting nearly impossible, urging everyone to act quickly before they lose. The young man instructs the two women to take the slime pieces they collected earlier and shove them into their ears, despite their disgust and protests, warning that their eardrums will burst if they don't act fast. With grim determination, the group reluctantly inserts the slimy orbs into their ears, wincing at the unpleasant sensation as the young man leads by example, squeezing the slime into his ear while the others struggle to follow suit. Surrounded by a swarm of bats hanging menacingly from the ceiling, the group covers their ears in agony as the piercing sound assaults them, their expressions a mix of shock and determination. The young man proudly shows the slime-made earplugs, explaining how their elasticity molds perfectly to the ears and blocks out the high-frequency attacks, while the women cautiously try them on, uncertain but hopeful. With earplugs securely in place, the group charges forward confidently, their weapons ready and magic flaring, prepared to fight back against the bats who rely on their sonic assault. The elf woman unleashes a powerful magical flame, striking the bats whose attack and defense are surprisingly weak. As the group watches the defeated creatures fall, their path now clearer to continue onward. The young man smiles as he holds up the loot they've gathered. Bat wings, bat meat, and a chunk of green magic stone, declaring their haul complete. The elf woman sighs in relief, glad they survived, while the young woman grimaces, exhausted and fed up with the slimy earplugs. As the young man rolls a strange round object in his hand, he tells the group they should rest before moving on to the next floor. His curiosity piqued, he examines the odd stone closely, surprised by its appearance. The stone is marked with a question mark and strange symbols, labeled as a suspicious stone. The group notes the odd smell in the area, prompting the young man to consider using an analysis spell. Nearby, towering formations resembling stalactites rise ominously, catching the attention of the women. The young man connects the dots, realizing the stalactite-like structures are actually piles of bat droppings or guano. He holds up the guano with wide eyes, confirming their discovery. The group looks around nervously, surrounded by the towering mounds of bat poop, the young woman visibly distressed by the sight. Panic sets in as the young woman urges everyone to flee, desperate to escape the guano-filled area. The young man tries to calm her, but then his expression shifts to one of determination. He suggests they collect all the guano, revealing a new plan as he focuses intently, ready to turn this unsettling discovery to their advantage. The young man energetically gathers the guano stones, surprising the young woman who questions the purpose of collecting such filthy objects. The elf woman watches quietly, intrigued by the unexpected plan. He admits uncertainty about the guano's use but notes its rarity surpasses even the boss slime's hide, showing the stone's rarity level as a valuable indicator. His confident expression reveals his belief that the guano will prove useful. The group discusses the significance of their finds, with the young woman asking the elf if she understands the young man's reasoning. The elf smiles knowingly, explaining that their slime hide bag allowed them to carry water, implying the collected materials hold deeper importance. The young woman playfully chides the elf for trusting the young man so completely, while the elf calmly affirms her faith in him. The young woman wonders aloud if there is a hidden reason behind the elf's unwavering trust, highlighting the strong bond between them. The group stands at the edge of a vast, cracked cavern floor, the jagged terrain stretching out before them. The young man notes how each dungeon floor looks completely different, urging caution as they proceed. The elf woman and the young woman exchange concerned glances, sensing something unusual about this place. Suddenly, the young man notices strange, translucent blobs forming on the ground, alerting the group to a potential monster trap. The elf woman grips her weapon tightly, eyes wide with alarm, while the young woman nervously calls out to their teacher, clearly unsettled by the sudden danger. The young woman struggles to control the mysterious blobs emerging uncontrollably around her, panic evident on her face as she wonders what to do. The two small companions watch anxiously, while the elf woman and the young man react with shock and concern, realizing the situation is escalating beyond their expectations. The young woman suddenly struggles as translucent blobs surround her, causing alarm among the group who watch in shock and confusion. The young man quickly deduces it might be a status ailment, but the young woman insists there were no warning signs. He begins to piece together the nature of the strange phenomenon affecting her. The young woman conjures a new spell, summoning glowing water bubbles around her, surprising everyone. The young man explains that fighting monsters in the dungeon allows them to absorb magic energy and learn new spells, causing them to level up rapidly. The young woman marvels at this effect, amazed by the dungeon's power to enhance their abilities. The group notices that the water bubbles don't cause any pain, feeling weak and harmless. The young man clarifies that despite their appearance, the water bubbles are actually incredibly powerful, leaving the young woman skeptical but intrigued by his confident assertion. Standing on the third floor, the group surveys the cavernous space filled with numerous holes in the walls. The young man comments on the dangerous environment, while the young woman and the elf woman exchange uneasy glances, sensing that something is bound to emerge from the ominous openings. The young man senses something amiss and asks the young woman if she feels something wrong. She points out the holes in the cavern walls, wondering if they might be a monster nest, while the elf woman doubts he's paying attention. Suddenly, the young woman lunges forward, startling the group. Without warning, the group is bombarded from all sides by a sticky, corrosive digestive fluid, causing the young woman to panic as her clothes begin to dissolve. The young man and the others brace themselves, shocked by the sudden assault. Emerging from the darkness, massive worm-like monsters with grotesque, gaping maws and dripping saliva reveal themselves, surrounding the group. The young man shouts in alarm, recognizing the creatures as giant worms, while the young woman reacts with fear and disbelief. The young man pieces together the terrifying truth. The holes are the mouths of these monstrous worms. The young woman trembles in terror, overwhelmed by the horrifying sight of their faces, as one of the giant worms lunges forward with its terrifying maw wide open. The young woman desperately urges the translucent blobs to go away, realizing that shooting randomly won't work. While the elf woman watches anxiously, the young man smirks, amused by the situation, prompting the young woman to question his laughter as she calls for their teacher's guidance. The group stands firm as massive worm-like monsters with gaping maws and dripping saliva approach. The young man confidently declaring this will be a huge catch. The young woman expresses concern, noting the teacher's tendency to devise strange plans. While the elf woman shares her bad feeling about the situation, the young man announces his decision to act, rallying everyone. The young man enthusiastically proposes making the giant worm their new party member and bringing it back to the village, causing the young woman and elf woman to react with shock and disbelief. The two small companions watch nervously, unsure how to respond to the bold plan. The young man grins confidently as the young woman vehemently objects to his idea, calling it gross while he insists the village will love it. The young woman pleads for someone to listen to her. The elf woman hesitantly agrees if it's only one, and the young man turns to ask the young woman if she can handle it, despite her strong opposition. Surrounded by the giant worms, the group struggles to get close, hindered by the corrosive digestive fluid dripping from the monsters. The young man warns that this fluid is far worse in reality than in the game, where it only lowers weapon and armor stats. He urges the young woman to use the water bubble spell again, catching her off guard. She protests, recalling she already tried firing the water bubbles earlier with no effect, but he insists she's been using it wrong. Instead of shooting at the worms, she must fire the bubbles around the group. The young woman listens intently, surprised by the new tactic as he prepares to explain the plan. The young man outlines the strategy. They will all gather deliberately in one spot to draw the worms' attention to a single point, forcing the monsters to attack simultaneously. At that moment, the young woman must unleash every last water bubble she has, concentrating their power for maximum effect. Determination fills her eyes as she readies herself. The group releases a barrage of shimmering water bubbles, pouring all their magic power into them as the worms open their gaping mouths wide in unison. The young woman commands to keep pouring magic into the bubbles, creating a powerful barrier of water around them, preparing for the decisive moment to strike back against the overwhelming threat. The group unleashes a torrent of shimmering water bubbles, surrounding themselves with a protective barrier that bursts outward, repelling the giant worms' corrosive attacks. They watch in awe as the water bubbles absorb every physical strike, forming an incredibly powerful defense skill that shields them completely. Confident in their protection, they prepare to exploit the worm's sole attack of digestive fluid, anticipating the monster's panic and retreat once their attacks prove ineffective. Seizing the moment as the worms turn away in confusion, the group launches a coordinated offensive, striking fiercely to overwhelm their foes and turn the tide of battle. The group stands victorious, relieved to have survived the battle, as the young man notes the huge worm they faced was the boss. The hooded figure claims his power will save the village and beyond, but the young woman interrupts, concerned about taming the monster. She demands attention to that crucial task, while the young woman struggles to assert herself against the overwhelming confidence of the hooded figure. The elf woman calmly approaches the giant worm, who remains calm and docile beside her. The young woman reacts with shock and disgust at the creature's close-up appearance, but the elf woman smiles warmly and introduces the worm as Mikuin, much to the young man's bewilderment. The elf woman wields a whip, preparing to control Mikuin, while the young man comments on the oddity of the worm's name, and the young woman nervously warns that something feels wrong about Mikuin. The young man silently resolves to stop arguing with the young woman as they receive rewards for their victory. A yellow magic stone chunk and giant worm meet. The group advances into a lush, mysterious forest labeled the 4th floor, marveling at the vibrant, alien flora surrounding them. The young man expresses awe at the beauty of the place, while the others look on with a mix of curiosity and caution as they prepare to explore deeper. The young woman excitedly spots tiny winged creatures fluttering nearby, marveling at their cuteness. While the young man identifies them as fairies, she nervously wonders if they must fight these little beings. But he reassures her that won't be necessary. The elf woman explains that fairies are friendly monsters, naturally curious and sociable. As the group watches the fairies playfully interact with the 2 small companions dressed in animal costumes, the scene is filled with joyful laughter and lighthearted fun. The group strolls through the forest, basking in the peaceful atmosphere as the young woman expresses how wonderful it is to see the 2 small companions playing with the fairies. The young man agrees, though the mood shifts as they face a large, ominous tree root blocking their path, signaling a change in tone. Suddenly, a powerful fairy with dark markings and an intimidating presence appears, announcing a boss battle ahead. The young woman accuses their mentor of lying about the dangers, while the young man braces himself, acknowledging that this fight is unavoidable as the fairies launch a fierce attack. The young man holds a cluster of white and yellow magic stone chunks while the young woman apologizes to the small fairies gathered around her. The elf woman watches silently as the group discusses the fairies' surprising appetite for caterpillars, prompting curiosity and wonder about what lies ahead. They enter a cavern sparkling with crystals, the young woman excitedly pointing at a fairy fluttering above. The small companions in animal costumes run ahead joyfully, while the giant worm follows calmly. Their expressions shift to surprise as they approach a mysterious glowing exit. A vast, open landscape stretches before them, dotted with trees and mountains under a cloudy sky. The group stands at the edge of a cliff, gazing out at the expansive terrain filled with floating magical rings, contemplating the journey ahead. From a higher vantage point, the group looks down over a rugged valley with cliffs and scattered foliage. The young woman gestures energetically as they prepare to descend, the small companions and magical creatures close behind, ready to continue their adventure. The elf woman, the young woman, and the 2 small companions stand in surprise, questioning if they somehow ended up outside. The young woman demands to know what is happening and where they are. A vast, open landscape stretches out before them, with trees and hills under a cloudy sky. The young man calmly explains that they are still inside the labyrinth, and this floor is the one destined to save everyone. With determined eyes, he declares that this place, from the end of the world, is their final hope. The group stands on a cliff edge, gazing out over a vast landscape as the young man speaks of a final hope. His eyes shine with determination as he explains this place will become a vital base to protect everyone from disaster. The young woman, curious and eager, asks for clarification while he gestures toward the sprawling terrain below. The scene shifts to detailed views of the abundant nature surrounding them. Lush trees, sunlight filtering through leaves, and expansive mountains stretching into the distance. The young man continues describing the sunstone light pouring down and the vast land, emphasizing the potential of this place. The young man envisions the future, imagining fields, workshops, and homes flourishing here. His hand glows with magical energy as he declares they can build whatever they want in this place, promising a settlement where they can live in peace. The imagery of a quaint village nestled among crops and buildings reinforces his hopeful vision. With arms wide open, he proclaims his intention to build a brand new village, inspiring awe and surprise in the young woman and the elf woman beside him. Their expressions reflect a mix of wonder and anticipation as they absorb the magnitude of his dream. The young woman gasps in disbelief at the revelation of an entire underground village, questioning its very possibility, while the young man confidently explains that with his power and the labyrinth's existence, they have 3 years left before the surface is destroyed and can pull it off. The slender elf woman listens silently, her expression thoughtful and hopeful. Standing together on a path surrounded by trees, the group reflects on the young man's true wish, as the 2 small companions and the giant worm look on. The young man clenches his fist determinedly, vowing to return to the capital one day, while a warm scene of a family with children is shown, symbolizing hope and future reunion. The trio walks down stone steps into the underground village, the young woman commenting on the surprising size of the settlement. The young man admits he was surprised too but expresses faith that the young man can succeed. The young woman then shyly admits she has been wondering about something for a while the elf woman gazes on with a soft, dreamy smile. The elf woman acts unusually cheerful and dreamy, causing the young woman to remark on her strange behavior. The young man nervously asks if he said something odd, but she reassures him with a gentle smile, saying he hasn't said anything strange at all, maintaining a calm and affectionate demeanor. The elf woman kneels gracefully, addressing the young man with deep respect and calling him my lord. Surprising him with the sudden shift, she explains her resolve to dedicate herself entirely to him, promising to address him with even deeper respect from now on. The young man, taken aback, urges her to hold back and not go so far. Standing together, he sincerely appreciates her words but asks her to drop the overly formal way of addressing him, which feels too much. She blushes and wonders if such respect is not allowed, while he shyly admits he actually liked the way she used to call him before. The elf woman brightens instantly, joyfully agreeing that the previous way felt more natural. While the young man smiles in relief, the young woman teases him for getting the elf ahead of herself, who laughs softly, admitting she got a bit carried away. The young woman explains that the elf's devotion skyrocketed because the young man got a little too fired up talking about his big dream. The small companions confirm there's no doubt about her strong devotion. The young man, still puzzled, admits he doesn't understand Paula at all. While the elf woman remains silent, lost in thought, a man nearby encourages the young man to go out and find his dream on his own 2 feet. The young man tells the young woman that the path they walk on truly belongs to her, his expression bright with hope, while the slender elf woman smiles warmly, her eyes soft and full of affection. The group stands together, looking ahead as the elf woman walks slightly apart, her long hair flowing gently behind her. Night falls unexpectedly, and the group looks up in surprise as the cracked moon hangs in the sky, its eerie glow casting shadows around them. The young man's face grows serious as he contemplates the unchanged moon, while the elf woman beside him watches the sky with a quiet expression. The young man worries silently about the safety of his family left behind in the royal capital and the intentions of the Night Order hunting him. The young woman walks beside him, sharing his concern, as small companions trail along. Suddenly, 3 shadowy figures emerge from the bushes, their presence alarming the group. The pursuers reveal themselves, shouting a command to capture the group. The young man reacts with alarm, realizing the danger as the figures wield weapons. He braces himself, urging the others to hold their ground and prepare for confrontation, the tension rising sharply. The tall elf woman commands the attackers to back off, her voice firm and authoritative. As a small fairy hovers beside her, the villagers, armed with farming tools, brace themselves for battle, their weapons slicing through the air. The elf woman stands confidently, holding a leash attached to the giant worm, ready for whatever comes next. The young man, pinned by the worm's jaws, struggles desperately while the young woman recognizes the voice commanding stillness. Her eyes wide with shock, the elf woman warns that if he wants to survive, he must stop moving, her gaze cold and unwavering as she grips a dagger tightly. The villagers stand united, their faces filled with determination and fear, clutching their makeshift weapons as they prepare to defend themselves. The young man and the young woman exchange worried glances, stunned by the sudden appearance of the villagers in this tense moment. The young man sits on the ground, startled and confused, while the elf woman contemplates the situation silently, questioning if there has been a misunderstanding. She considers whether to rough the villagers up to make them talk or take another approach, her expression darkening as the cracked moon looms overhead. The young man anxiously wonders if she has noticed something lurking in the shadows, fearing what might come next. The towering worm snarls with drool dripping from its gaping maw as the tall elf woman firmly holds its leash, preparing to strike. The young man, alarmed, pleads for her to stop, warning that the villagers are nearby. The elf woman's eyes widen in surprise as she recognizes the approaching villagers, while the scene shifts to a rustic village building under the darkening sky. Bowing deeply on the wooden floor, the elf woman tearfully begs for forgiveness, overwhelmed with guilt. The villagers, taken aback, try to reassure her that they share blame in the misunderstanding. Her sobs intensify as she struggles to forgive herself, her hands trembling on the floor. Tears streaming down her face, the elf woman declares she must take matters into her own hands, despite the young man's urgent plea for her to stop derailing the conversation. The villagers watch her with a mixture of concern and surprise as she calms herself and begins to address the group more composedly. The young man steps back, preparing to clarify the situation. The young woman laughs nervously, admitting that the whole ordeal started because of her. Apologizing for being out so late at night, the young man acknowledges their shared responsibility as the villagers explain that Mia had not returned, prompting them to come searching. They mention hearing she had gone to the river with the group, bringing the story full circle as everyone stands together, reflecting on the events that unfolded. The villagers recall how monsters began pouring out of the strange cave, causing them to panic and mistakenly believe the group had been killed, their fear evident as they apologize profusely, A man nervously asks the older figure what the cave and its monsters actually are, prompting a serious response. The older man reveals the cave is a magic energy pool, shocking the villagers who react with disbelief and fear, questioning if a den of monsters lies beneath their village. The village chief urges everyone to remain calm despite the unsettling news, acknowledging that no one truly knew the danger lurking below. The young man explains that a barrier had concealed the cave from perception until recently, which explains the villagers' panic. The crowd urgently demands to know what they should do next, calling out to the village chief for guidance. The chief pauses thoughtfully, considering the gravity of the situation. The young man insists they must immediately report the threat to the Lord and request an investigation, warning that if the danger is confirmed, they will likely have no choice but to abandon the village. The villagers react with shock and fear as the reality of their predicament sinks in. The villagers stand in shock and disbelief, voices trembling as they question the idea of abandoning their home after years of hard work building the village from nothing. A man with cat ears angrily scolds the young man, blaming him for the dire news, but another urges calm, insisting it's not his fault. The young man and the tall elf woman exchange worried glances, both silently questioning if their village's fate is truly sealed. The young man reflects deeply, realizing that even in Drakuro II, the village's well-being was closely linked to the world's balance. A symbolic scale shows the village's happiness level rising and falling, emphasizing that solving the village's problems and increasing its happiness was the best way to delay its destruction. The ominous message warns that losing the village now would have grave consequences. A grim vision of a mountain of skulls and broken weapons fills the background as the young man fears a calamity will strike all at once, threatening his family, the villagers, and everything he holds dear. Sweat beads on his face as he contemplates the devastating possibility, his expression tense and determined. Stepping forward with resolve, the young man commands the crowd to wait, preparing to reveal the truth. The villagers look on with anxious anticipation as he declares that the reason they entered the magic energy pool was to save the village, signaling his commitment to face the challenges ahead without turning back. The young man stands resolute before the gathered villagers, vowing to protect the precious family awaiting him in the royal capital. His determined gaze sharpens as he pledges to convince everyone in the village, no matter the cost, to understand the gravity of their situation. The tall elf woman and the young woman beside her watch him with wide, surprised eyes, while the village chief listens solemnly, his expression grave and contemplative. The young man faces the gathered villagers and the village chief, his voice steady as he asks if they truly want to save the village. The chief, with a serious expression, questions what he means by that, while the villagers listen intently. With enthusiasm, the young man reveals that the magic energy pool beneath the village is actually an incredible treasure trove, known as the Underground Labyrinth. He gestures widely as images of valuable artifacts and crystals appear behind him, captivating the crowd. The traveling merchant's eyes widen in shock as the young man presents shining crystals, prompting him to exclaim in disbelief. The merchant eagerly points out more treasures, overwhelmed by their rarity, while the young man watches with a knowing smile. The young man confidently assures the villagers that the luminous stones are rare and valuable, enough to sustain the entire village for months. He holds out a pouch of coins, emphasizing the treasure's worth, while the villagers react with a mix of surprise and hope. The young man holds out several large bottles filled with water, asking the villagers to try it. The crowd looks on with surprise and curiosity, some questioning if it really is water. One man eagerly drinks from a bottle, eyes wide with shock. The villagers react with amazement as the water's power surges through them, one exclaiming how incredible it feels. The young man explains that there are other materials from the labyrinth that can be turned into magic stones and daily necessities, while the villagers beg for more. He proudly reveals that all the treasures displayed were gathered from inside the labyrinth, prompting astonished questions about how they fought the monsters. The villagers look at the pile of crystals, mushrooms, and other items in disbelief, seeking answers. The young man admits it's hard for others to imagine him defeating monsters alone, but the tall elf woman steps forward, smiling confidently, and says he had dependable allies with him. The villagers press for details, especially about how he managed before those allies arrived. The young woman proudly declares that Mia is an exceptionally talented mage, striking a confident pose as magical energy sparkles around her. Nearby, two men laugh dismissively, mocking her by saying she can barely light a fire, causing her to clench her fists in frustration. The young man gently scolds the older man for his harsh joke, while the young woman smirks mischievously. Ready to prove herself, she announces that she has already become a whole new person who can defeat any monster in seconds, spinning gracefully as the crowd watches in surprise. The young woman conjures flames in her hand, boldly proclaiming she is now a great mage, The crowd laughs and teases her about her dramatic poses, urging her to just cast the spell without the theatrics. She tries different stances, determined to get it right. With a serious expression, she summons a powerful swirling fireball, causing the onlookers to stare in awe and surprise at the sudden display of her true magical power. The young woman ignites a swirling fireball, but the villagers barely react, prompting her to question their lack of response and resolve to try again. Suddenly, the fireball explodes violently, destroying a house as the young man urgently pleads for her to stop. The young woman sits on the floor, tears streaming down her face as another woman sternly warns her that if she repeats such destruction, she will be expelled from the village. The young man reflects on how much stronger she has become, crediting the power of transmutation, while the woman confirms her capability. With determination, the young man declares that his power will enable them to fight monsters and challenge the labyrinth, turning the village's crisis into an opportunity for unlimited resources. The villagers listen in shock and awe as he speaks of this hopeful future. The crowd debates the possibility of fighting alongside the young woman, with some excited and others urging caution to hear the Lord's opinion first. The village chief rallies the people for one last push, while a determined man insists on acting immediately to prevent heavy taxes if the Lord learns of their discovery. The village chief, wearing a straw hat and marked by a single horn, solemnly addresses the young man with a firm refusal, apologizing for not accepting his proposal. The young man listens intently as the chief stresses the absolute necessity of ensuring the villagers' safety. The chief turns away, emphasizing the grave threat monsters pose. While the young man reflects on the chief's resolve, a flashback reveals the chief's family suffering a monster attack in the nearby forest, with his daughter missing and grandchild still unconscious from the resulting illness. An elder recounts hearing this from Oijin just the day before. The young man contemplates the chief's painful past and the weight of his decision, acknowledging there are things he cannot back down from. As images of his companions appear beside him, he faces the gathered villagers and the chief, preparing to respond. With a confident smile, the young man invites the chief to join them in entering the labyrinth. The chief and others react with shock and disbelief, one man shouting in alarm, fearing for the chief's safety, while the chief himself looks stunned by the unexpected proposal. The young woman suggests that with Mia's example and their teacher's presence, showing the chief the truth firsthand might change his mind. Despite another woman's protest, the young man confidently insists the chief will understand once he sees it himself, then urges him to witness something within the labyrinth. The chief's expression shifts to surprise as he listens. The chief contemplates deeply, surrounded by the villagers and the young man, before finally agreeing to the request. He declares he will go see for himself, the entrance to the labyrinth looming ominously covered in thick roots and vines. The chief brandishes a large spear carved from skeletal dog bones, a weapon meant for fighting monsters, surprising everyone. He nervously asks if he is truly joining the fight, and the young man assures him it suits him well. The young woman smirks, teasing the chief as he holds the spear. A cheerful man arrives, explaining he came along because the luminous stone seemed to call to him. The young man acknowledges the effort it took for him to join. The group prepares to enter the labyrinth together, the atmosphere tense but hopeful as they step forward. Sinister slimes with menacing grins approach swiftly, their presence announced with a chilling warning. The tall elf woman shouts out to Paula as the group behind her braces for the imminent attack, while the village chief winces in pain. The elf woman commands as she lashes a whip-like weapon at the advancing slimes, striking one down with precision. The chief struggles against the slime's grasp, his face strained, while the young man urges him to act now. The village chief summons his strength and swings his large bone-carved spear, piercing a slime with a powerful thrust. The young man praises the chief's spear work, while the defeated slime collapses lifelessly. The group stands victorious over the fallen slimes, with the young woman cheerfully declaring slimes are now easy to defeat. The chief reflects quietly, acknowledging how much everyone has leveled up since before, while a final panel illustrates the team's coordinated support making battles easier even for the less experienced. The group notices that monsters have respawned despite their hard work to defeat them, with the young woman expressing surprise while another explains this is typical of the labyrinth. The young man encourages everyone to keep pushing forward. They stand united, weapons ready, as a massive slime monster looms before them, and the team prepares to face a new wave of bat-like creatures. After clearing the second floor with relative ease, the group catches their breath amid fallen monsters. The cheerful man, who resembles the young man, marvels at the amount of materials and magic stones dropped by the creatures. The young woman recognizes him as her uncle, while he confidently claims that once accustomed, the battles become a breeze. The uncle pleads with the village chief not to abandon such a profitable place, but the chief remains contemplative. The young man gently addresses the chief, asking for his honest impression of the labyrinth. prompting the chief to consider the situation deeply as they stand together. The village chief, holding his bone-carved spear, faces the young man, the tall elf woman, and the cheerful man as he contemplates his thoughts on the labyrinth. He admits the monster threat wasn't as severe as he had feared. The cheerful man responds eagerly, while the chief remains serious. The chief warns that despite the tempting rare resources, the labyrinth is a den of unknown monsters not worth challenging willingly. He stresses the importance of the village's safety, prompting the young man to smile confidently and offer to show a special place. The group stands on a cliff overlooking a vast, open landscape as the young man reveals a secret underground space they discovered. The chief and the cheerful man express shock at the sight, while the young man explains the land doesn't belong to anyone and is free land. The chief, surprised by the concept of free land, is asked by the young man for his honest opinion. The chief kneels, examining the soil in his hand thoughtfully, his expression deep in contemplation as the group awaits his judgment. The village chief kneels, holding soil in his hand, declaring it good soil as the young man watches with a confident smile. The chief notes the soil is balanced, neither too heavy nor too light, and drains well. He contemplates the possibility of something more with this soil and asks the young man if he will hear him out on his plan. The chief suddenly shouts in surprise, questioning if the whole village is involved, while the cheerful man beside him looks equally shocked. The young man confirms that not only the fields but also workshops, houses, and everything will be built here. The chief closes his eyes, reflecting deeply as the young man suggests this is probably what the chief truly wants. The young man proposes building a herb garden in this fertile land. Catching the chief's attention, the chief, with a softened expression, recalls a sleeping young woman named Yut. Realizing the significance of the plan, the scene widens to reveal a vast, mountainous landscape, with the young man declaring this place a mountain of treasure. A crowd of villagers listens intently as the chief stands with the young man and the tall elf woman. The chief explains that he recently inspected the labyrinth with Nino-sama and, based on what he saw, is ready to share his renewed decision. The villagers react with a mix of surprise and anticipation as the chief prepares to reveal his choice. The village chief solemnly declares he has decided not to report their findings to the Lord, acknowledging that while the monster threat isn't completely gone, the labyrinth's appeal is undeniable. The group reacts with surprise and realization. The young man and the chief resolve to follow Nino-sama's lead for the village's growth, sparking cheers and excitement among the villagers who celebrate the decision to not abandon their home and vow to protect it. The villagers raise their fists in determination, toasting with labyrinth water and rallying each other to face the monsters head-on, while the chief watches quietly, a calm smile on his face as the group stands united behind him. The chief reflects on seeing the villagers so full of life for the first time, asking the young man to take care of the village once again, who responds with a sincere and confident affirmation. The village chief, the young man, the tall elf woman, and the cheerful man gather around a wooden table, discussing the many challenges ahead for the village's future. They focus on securing financial resources, producing medicines, and ensuring a stable food supply. The chief solemnly emphasizes that water is the most urgent concern, warning that simply drawing from the labyrinth water won't meet everyone's daily needs. The young man confidently assures the chief that he has already found a solution for the village's water source. The chief, surprised, asks for clarification. While the villagers look on curiously, the chief suddenly senses something amiss, prompting alarm from the crowd. A massive torrent of water erupts from the ground, startling everyone. The tall elf woman smiles calmly, while the chief and others react with shock and awe at the sudden gush. The tall elf woman reveals that she, Mikuin, was the one who brought up the water. The chief is stunned as villagers urge him to listen. The young man explains how Mikuin's giant worm companion began digging frantically underground, creating a path for the water to flow freely to the village. A massive burst of water erupts as the giant worm breaks through an underground water vein, sending villagers flying back in shock. The tall elf woman, Mikuin, grins confidently while twirling a whip, hinting there's more to come. Small, cheerful water spirits swirl around the gushing water, adding a magical touch. The villagers watch in awe as the muddy water rapidly clears before their eyes, revealing pure water. The young man smiles brightly, explaining that with this discovery, they can finally build a proper well. Several villagers express surprise and curiosity about how he knew about their plans. The young man recounts how he found traces of an unfinished abandoned well upon arriving, and thought that with monster assistance, they could complete it. Mikuin stands proudly beside him as the villagers express relief at the prospect of having a reliable water source. The village chief and a woman reflect on the astonishing development with a mix of admiration and concern. The young man explains how he realized the giant worm could dig where humans cannot, recalling the holes they saw at a certain labyrinth level. The The cheerful woman reacts with surprise, while the young man admits he once called the worm gross, but now appreciates its help for the village. Mikuin's worm companion looks on quietly, completing the explanation. A young woman bursts out crying, overwhelmed by the sight of the giant worm nearby, declaring the creature's face far too much for her to handle. Behind her, the young man, the tall elf woman, and the giant worm stand calmly. The scene shifts to a cozy interior where a woman cheerfully welcomes the young man back. Holding a plate as he enters with the others, she excitedly shares that the well is nearly finished, and the young man confirms the monsters will take care of the remaining work. Then, addresses the woman by name. The young man asks to borrow the kitchen for a while, explaining he wants to prepare something special for everyone in the village. The woman looks surprised. While the elf and village chief watch curiously, the young man smiles warmly, hinting at his plan, but the woman reacts with a mix of surprise and concern, asking if what he intends is really what she thinks. The young man reveals the main ingredient: worm meat. Much to the woman's shocked protest, he confidently assures her that despite its creepy appearance, the giant worm meat is surprisingly versatile and delicious. He begins preparing the meat, chopping it into pieces and mixing it with seasonings, inviting everyone to watch as he works. The young man turns to the two small creatures dressed in animal costumes, asking if they want to help. They enthusiastically respond, and he instructs them to roll the meat mixture into shapes. With their help, he prepares the food, then expertly fries the rolls in a pan, a focused yet content expression on his face as the cooking begins. A plate piled high with golden brown hamburg steaks drizzled in sauce is presented proudly, labeled as worm meat hamburg steak. The tall elf woman and the cheerful young woman exchange surprised looks, finding the dish unusual, while two small creatures dressed in animal costumes eagerly anticipate tasting it. The young man encourages everyone to try it, confident in its flavor. The two small creatures happily bite into the hamburg steaks, their faces lighting up with delight. The young man praises the dish as top tier, while the elf and the young woman stand nearby, still processing the surprising success. The elf suddenly turns to the young man, calling him my dear, catching him off guard. The elf woman opens her mouth wide, signaling she wants to try the food herself. The young man, a bit flustered, offers her a piece with chopsticks. She asks if she is allowed to have some. Her expression soft and hopeful, causing the young man to hesitate nervously. The elf delicately takes a bite of the hamburg steak, her eyes widening in surprise as she savors the taste. She continues chewing with a pleased expression, while the young man watches anxiously, asking how she finds it. She blushes slightly, enjoying the flavor more than expected, prompting the young man to comment on how much she seems to be savoring it. The elf woman's eyes well up with tears as she praises the dish, declaring it the best flavor she has ever tasted. The young man anxiously asks if it was awful, but she insists it was incredibly delicious, leaving him surprised and relieved. Suddenly, a cheerful voice calls out about an amazing smell, and a man with cat ears bursts in, eager to try the food. The young man invites everyone to help themselves, and the cat-eared man takes a big bite, his expression turning amazed as he describes the flavor as rich and smooth, leaving others curious and excited. The crowd eagerly reaches for the plates, voices filled with delight as they enjoy the dish. The young man and the elf woman smile, holding plates and agreeing to add sautéed bat meat to the menu next. Meanwhile, a young woman hesitates to try the food despite encouragement from others, and the young man suddenly senses something, turning alert. A majestic scale balances perfectly, symbolizing harmony restored. Around a table, villagers savor the food happily, their expressions content and surprised. The young man reflects quietly, understanding that the balance of the village and its people has improved, as the village chief and others share warm smiles, signaling a hopeful future. The village's happiness level has clearly risen, with villagers gathered around a table, laughing and sharing food joyfully. The young man reflects quietly, recognizing this as a meaningful step forward. The next day begins with a lively knock on the door as several villagers call out urgently to the young man, who sits up in bed, surprised by the sudden commotion. A woman and another villager arrive breathlessly, questioning the crowd's early morning gathering. The young man tries to calm the situation, asking what is wrong with so many people coming at once. The villagers, including the cat-eared man and others, raise their fists determinedly, expressing their eagerness to join the young man. The crowd passionately demands to be taken into the labyrinth immediately, their resolve unwavering. The young man stands shocked, overwhelmed by the sudden rush of volunteers all at once, while the tall elf woman watches with wide eyes, curious about how he will handle this unexpected surge of support. Several villagers eagerly volunteer to join the young man on his expedition, boasting about their strength and skills. One flexes his muscles from farm work, Another claims experience fighting monsters back home, while an elf confidently offers her archery skills. An older man calmly states he once trained as a swordsman to join the Knight Order. The crowd grows louder, with more villagers shouting their desire to join, overwhelming the young man who raises his hands to calm them. The young man expresses gratitude for their enthusiasm but explains he cannot take everyone into the labyrinth at once. He pauses thoughtfully before announcing he will select only 3 from the group, causing shocked and anxious reactions among the hopeful volunteers. The young man organizes the villagers, instructing them to line up and focus their will to light a magical lantern. Some participants struggle or are confused as they attempt to ignite it, while he explains that those without magic power will practice mock battles with wooden swords nearby. A man with a wide-brimmed hat steps forward, declaring himself the opponent for the mock battles, surprising the onlookers. The two clash swords with swift strikes, impressing the young man who notes the man's unexpected skill. The opponent smirks confidently as the duel continues, showing determination and focus. The man with the wide-brimmed hat explains he has fought off bandits and monsters during trade runs, earning the young man's respect. The tall elf woman summons Paula's tamed beasts, causing the others to panic as the creatures approach. The young man hints that the next expedition will begin after these mock battles conclude. The young man announces the selection of 3 people for the expedition: swordsman Johann, warrior Simon, and mage Leona, who is surprised but happy to be chosen. Meanwhile, the disappointed villagers who weren't selected wail loudly, unable to hide their frustration. A warrior with cat-like features named Haimo angrily demands to know why he was left out, recalling his reputation as the slime killer. The young man tries to calm him, promising to take everyone in turns eventually, while others suggest leaving Haimo behind. The scene shifts to the entrance of the labyrinth, where the group prepares for their journey. The chosen party enthusiastically battles a large monster, working together to defeat it. The mage Leona casts a powerful spell with the young man's support, impressing everyone. The final panel shows the group standing triumphantly on a rocky outcrop, overlooking the vast landscape ahead, ready to face the challenges of the labyrinth. The group stands amazed, gazing over a vast, rugged landscape as one remarks on the place's actual existence. The young man explains that despite the massive land, they will be making farmland here. Acknowledging the challenge of starting from scratch, he chuckles confidently while the others look on, noticing something moving in the distance. Suddenly, a giant worm-like monster bursts from the ground, startling the group. One shouts in alarm as the creature lunges toward them. The man warns that the whole area is affected by this, while the young woman notes the monster is a heart-stopper. They watch cautiously as the creature retreats, revealing the ground it passed over is already completely plowed. The group observes the plowed earth in surprise, while the monster, accompanied by a smiling woman, is identified as not being Mikuin. The woman happily introduces this new friend as Mizu-san, and another woman comments on how terrifying Mikuin is. The scene shifts to a close-up of the woman warning them not to confuse the two monsters, causing a mix of shock and amusement among the group. The young man holds up bags filled with a special transmuted item, instructing everyone to bury them evenly. The women and the others inspect the bags curiously, asking what they are. The young man explains their importance, while the group prepares to begin their work, focused and ready to cultivate the land ahead. The group kneels in the freshly plowed earth, carefully burying bags filled with a special substance. One woman, Mia, sniffs the contents with a sharp expression, her concern growing as she examines the material closely. Another woman asks what's wrong, noticing her unease, while the young man holding the substance smiles confidently, sensing something familiar about it. Suddenly, Mia reacts with shock, realizing the substance is transmuted from bat guano stone. She hurriedly dumps the contents out, revealing a pile of dark fertilizer made by blending bat guano stone with composted lime. The young man explains he combined it with other materials to recreate something he had seen before. Johann announces they have finished burying the bags, ready for the final step, while Mia anxiously questions the unclear nature of the substance. But the young man urges her to trust him. A basket of labyrinth garlic is presented, an edible plant suited for cultivation that naturally grows within the labyrinth and can be stored long-term. The young man explains that once they plant this, their work will be done. The others note garlic's drought resistance and low water needs, though they acknowledge the vast land will make the task challenging. The young man smiles warmly as the group agrees this is a good choice. The young man promises to bring more villagers gradually to help cultivate the land, relying on the current group until then. They all cheer enthusiastically, ready to take on the challenge. Weeks later, the team is shown working together in the fields, planting garlic and tending the soil with determination, united in their effort to transform the rugged landscape into fertile farmland. The group stands before rows of thriving plants, marveling at how quickly the barren land has transformed into a proper field. Excitement and amazement ripple through them as they admire the fruits of their labor. The young man holds up a handful of dark pellets, explaining that the secret to the rapid growth is bat guano fertilizer, a powerful substance that enhances plant growth far beyond ordinary dungeon-made fertilizers. Energy crackles as the young man demonstrates how transmutation drastically boosts plant growth speed, impressing everyone. They eagerly discuss how, with such power, they could cultivate many more crops in this place. The group enthusiastically brainstorms expanding their farming efforts, suggesting growing wheat, building irrigation, and even starting livestock grazing. Nearby, the women and an elf smile warmly, sensing that their long-awaited dream of cultivating this land is finally coming true. The young man smiles with determination, declaring that the development of the underground labyrinth has finally begun, and he urges Ollie and Annie to wait for him. He reflects that if everything continues smoothly, his plan will become reality. Suddenly, his expression shifts to shock as a mysterious, ornate object falls from above, causing alarm. The group looks toward the source of the disturbance, sensing that the situation is tipping toward a dangerous outcome. A flock of large, aggressive birds rushes toward them, accompanied by smaller animals like rabbits and mice fleeing in panic. The young man identifies these as assault birds, prompting shocked reactions from the group as they witness the oncoming threat. The group braces for the attack, with one member urgently asking what to do and whether they should fight. The young man explains that assault birds are extremely ferocious and possess a petrification spell that can incapacitate anyone instantly. He warns that if their eyes turn red, the danger escalates, and they must defeat the birds before that happens. The young man commands Mia and Paula to use their magic and tamed beasts to attack the assault birds, emphasizing their low magic defense. Both women respond eagerly, Mia conjuring a fiery spell while Paula prepares to unleash her beasts, joined by two small, fierce companions ready to fight. The group organizes quickly, with mages moving to the front lines and those skilled with weapons instructed to stay behind and finish off any remaining enemies. The villagers shout their battle cries, brandishing weapons as the assault birds charge forward aggressively. The defenders cast spells and swing weapons, pushing back the attacking birds with coordinated effort. The young man assesses their strength confidently, noting they can handle the current threat, while he prepares to take further action against a fallen assault bird on the ground. Holding the fallen bird, the young man focuses on transmuting it quickly. The group notices a massive, unflinching bird among the attackers, which Mia identifies as the boss. The tension rises as they prepare for the next phase of the battle. The massive assault bird looms threateningly over the group, its beak wide open as the villagers ready their weapons in alarm. The young man stares in shock at the enormous creature, questioning if they can even bring it down, while the bird's eyes begin to glow ominously red. Panic rises as the young man warns everyone not to meet the bird's gaze, knowing its petrification power is now active. He debates whether to use his staff or finish the transmutation first, urgently calling out to Paula as the bird lunges forward. The young man leaps to protect Paula from the bird's attack, narrowly avoiding harm, then quickly checks if she is all right while the elf woman warns that turning around now would be fatal, heightening the tension of the battle. The young man faces the massive assault bird, its swirling, hypnotic eye locking onto him with a terrifying intensity. The creature's beak cracks ominously as it advances, and the man's expression shifts to shock and alarm. Suddenly, the ground beneath him begins to fracture as he braces himself, his body tense and ready. Around him, the group watches in stunned silence, their wide eyes reflecting the escalating danger as the bird's presence threatens to overwhelm them. The young man suddenly stiffens as his body begins to crack like stone, alarming the young woman beside him who cries out in shock. Another man rushes forward, determined to shatter the petrification with his sword, but the young woman urgently warns him to hold back. The man swings wildly at the petrifying figure, but his attacks fail to break the stone-like transformation. The young woman commands a large creature named Mikuin to act, explaining that a wicked beast spell will break in seconds. Though the young man protests that it won't cure the petrification, nearby, two men anxiously call out, worried about the teacher's condition. The petrification spreads rapidly, affecting two other men who scream in pain as their bodies begin to turn to stone. The young man grimly notes that the villagers are also succumbing to the petrification curse, frustration and urgency mounting as the threat grows. The young man holds up a small ornate bottle, revealing it to be a petrification reversal elixir made earlier from the bird's eye. He instructs everyone to calm down, explaining that drinking it should cure those affected. The young woman spots the elixir on the ground and rushes to retrieve it, while the young man reflects that he had hoped the villagers would drink it first to prevent the petrification from taking hold. The massive assault bird's claw crashes into the ground, sending debris flying as the group watches in stunned silence. The bird steps forward, its eyes wide and menacing, while the young woman's face fills with shock and fear. The young man's expression mirrors hers. His mouth agape as stone fragments begin to form on his skin. The black-haired youth and the elf woman stare in alarm, realizing the petrification is spreading rapidly. The bird lets out a terrifying screech, causing the young woman to in disbelief and the young man to tremble with dread. The elf woman and a man behind her panic, fearing the worst as the petrification curse threatens to consume them all. The young woman trembles, realizing that without the petrification reversal elixir, everyone will turn to stone. The urgency of the situation deepens as the villagers' fate hangs in the balance. Two women scream in desperation, refusing to succumb to the petrification as they desperately cast spells. Their hands weaving powerful magic, the group fights back fiercely. But the young woman pleads for another solution. Her eyes wide with hope and fear, the young man and others prepare to defend themselves, while the massive assault bird watches ominously, its presence a looming threat over the battlefield. The young man's body is visibly hardening, stone creeping over his skin as he struggles to stay conscious. He grimaces in pain, realizing everything was on the verge of working out until now. The elf woman reaches out to him, her face filled with concern and determination as the petrification spreads. The young man falls backward, helpless, while she moves quickly to support him, both caught in the dire moment of their battle against the curse. The young man collapses backward, his body cracking like stone as a concerned woman rushes to his side, pleading for him to hold on. Her wide eyes fill with disbelief as she realizes the petrification might be irreversible. His face contorts in pain, fragments of stone breaking away as he struggles to speak, warning that at this rate he will die. He weakly calls out to Paula, his expression desperate and filled with fading hope. The petrifying man urges Paula to take command if he turns completely to stone, and trusting her with the group's survival, he implores her to find a way to defeat the monstrous bird, believing the petrification spell might break if they succeed, and asks her to forget about him, counting on her strength. Paula's eyes widen in shock as she watches the petrification spread. The group fighting the assault bird nearby. The man's voice weakly calls her name again, urging her to hurry, while she kneels beside him, her expression a mix of fear and determination. The elf woman firmly refuses the desperate man's plea, insisting she means it when she says no, shocking him with her disobedience. He struggles to understand, recalling how she always followed his orders without question. She declares with conviction that the one thing she will never do is abandon him, her dear, no matter the circumstances, and rushes forward determined to save him despite his protests. As she moves, a dark swirling aura surrounds her, signaling danger as her consciousness begins to fade. She gasps in shock, covering her mouth, while the petrifying man weakly calls her name, his face cracked and crumbling like stone. The elf woman collapses beside the petrified man, clutching his face tenderly as tears fall, showing her deep sorrow and resolve in this dire moment. A close, tender moment unfolds as a woman presses her lips gently to the cracked, stone-like face of a petrified man, whispering a heartfelt plea for him to return to his former self. The scene shifts to a flashback over a decade ago, showing a group of people gathered in a grand hall, their expressions a mix of curiosity and anticipation. Two men gaze in awe at a young woman, calling her a beauty and declaring she must be brought to their territory to marry and become the Lord's wife. A heated argument erupts among several men, each claiming they will be the one to marry her, while a composed woman warns one of the men to step back, signaling rising tension. The narrative explains the young lady's overwhelming demonic charm, a unique power of the demon race that causes uncontrollable affection from the opposite sex, often leading to conflicts among their kind. The young woman stands surrounded by a dark aura, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and realization as the narrator reflects on how unexpectedly strong her power is. Flames engulf a grand building as a man laments the madness consuming their beautiful empire, blaming the escalating conflict between two territories on the fight over the young lady. The young woman looks shocked and fearful as others accuse her of bringing ruin, labeling her the devil girl whose very existence threatens their empire. A young elf girl, tears streaming down her face, reaches out desperately as a heavy wooden door slams shut behind her. She is ordered to be locked away, forbidden from ever showing herself in public again, condemned as a forbidden existence within the prestigious Alvarez family of the empire. Her sobs echo in the lonely room where she is left isolated. Memories flash back to her childhood, showing her playing and studying with other children her age, competing with wooden swords. Yet her name was forbidden even within her own family. She watches from a window as others live freely, while she spends long years alone in a small, bare room of the mansion, the weight of isolation pressing down on her. Time passes as she gazes out the window, then looks at herself in a mirror, trying on a simple dress. She sits quietly at a table with a modest meal, her expression wistful as she reads a storybook filled with tales of wonderful men and heroic adventures. She wonders if someone like her could ever meet such a man, doubting it is anything more than a fantasy. A gentle knock interrupts her solitude, and a kindly older elf man calls to her, asking if he may come in. She recognizes him as her uncle and responds softly. Though he reminds her that certain things are forbidden, he urges her to listen carefully as they begin to speak about venturing outside the estate, hinting at a change in her confined life. A calm man with pointed ears reassures the young woman that her powers should have settled by now, promising to handle any consequences. She worries about her father's reaction, but he encourages her to go out and find her own path with her own 2 feet. The young woman, cloaked and contemplative, sits quietly on a wagon, reflecting on the path meant for her. With her uncle's encouragement, she recalls running away from home in a rush, pondering what she should do next. The young man smiles warmly, expressing how long it has been since anyone recognized her existence or said her name. She is surprised he knows her, while he insists she was the first to need him in a long time. He extends his hand, affirming that he needs her just as much as she needs him, their mutual recognition and need forming a heartfelt bond after years of isolation. A man and a cat-eared warrior urgently plead for the petrified figure to return to his old self, begging him to shine a light on their path. The elf woman leans in, pressing a gentle kiss to the cracked stone face, asking him to continue guiding her as fragments of stone fall away. The elf woman reflects on how Paula must have realized the potion was spilling, so she cleverly held it in her mouth to prevent losing any of it. Shards of the broken container scatter as the elf covers her mouth in shock, tears welling in her eyes. The petrified man begins to break free from his stone prison, shards falling as he gasps, his expression a mix of relief and pain. The elf woman reaches out to him, witnessing his gradual return. The elf woman tearfully embraces the man, overwhelmed with gratitude and relief that he has returned. He smiles warmly, thanking her and acknowledging that without her, they would have lost everything. The young man, gripping his staff firmly, declares his determination to survive and not give up in this place, calling it his reason to keep fighting. Beside him, the elf woman stands resolute, holding her weapon ready as he asks for her hand to face the assault bird together. She responds with a confident and heartfelt affirmation, their bond strengthening as they prepare for the final showdown with unwavering resolve.